o'clock, we're gonna call the Oxford School Committee Monday, September 14th, 2020, 6 o'clock meeting to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, MGL C30A 18, and the governor's order concerning imposition on strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. Meetings in the town of Oxford will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. We'll strive to provide access to such meetings via a link or a number to call in or other similar option. In the event we are unable to accommodate the same, despite best efforts, we will post recorded sessions of the meeting as soon as possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings. In the individual Zoom meeting numbers and consequently to click on are on the school website, oxps.org. So first on our agenda, if we could call Lori Kelly, Town Clerk, if she could come sit right at the desk in front of us. Welcome, Lori.
Good evening. Thank you for having me in.
Thank you for coming in. So we do want to recognize her as she is retiring. So just a little bit of background. She's had 30 years of service to the town. And I know she's been a big support to the schools for posting our meetings. She also keeps track of our minutes for us. And she's just been very, very helpful to the central office staff. She also works very collaboratively, tough word, in a mask, with us when we have voting in our buildings. I know when I was the principal at the middle school, Lori was great to work with. So we certainly appreciate you for all you've done. You swore me in. You were the lucky one who got to swear me in. So there's probably many people out there wish you didn't, but thank you for swearing me in and all of us on the board. So just thank you very much for coming tonight. So we do have a certificate of recognition that I'd like to read. The Town of Oxford School Committee is honored to present the certificate of recognition to Lori Kelly, Town Clerk, in sincere appreciation of her extraordinary service, dedication to her profession, due diligence with respect to the state standards, and commitment and contributions to the Oxford Public Schools. Presented the 24th of August, 2020. We know you couldn't be here last time. Signed by Dan Coonan, Chairman, and I will present that to you. So if you wouldn't mind stepping forward, I will very respectfully, socially distance and hand that out to you. It's a little gift, certificate, and a card underneath.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Enjoy, huh?
Enjoy your time.
I know, really.
I feel like we should be hugging.
Thank you so much for everything. Thanks, everyone. Could I take a moment? Absolutely.
Yes, if you'd like to say a few words, please do.
Thank you. You already touched on our relationship over the years with the polling places being situated in the schools, and I know that has been a challenge. Not the best case scenario, but we always seem to make it work, and I really appreciate the cooperation of the principals, and there have been many over the years for me. Great cooperation, and the custodial staff has been phenomenal, especially this year. If you don't know, they did work with us, can't breathe, they did work with us to sanitize the booths and the pens at this past election a couple weeks ago. And we don't have enough staff in the facilities maintenance department, so we couldn't have done it without them. So I'm very grateful for those that stepped forward to help with that. And thank you again for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming in. All right, next order of business is the consent agenda. So has the committee had a chance to look at the August 24th, 2020 minutes? Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing no discussion, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second it?
All right, a motion and a second. Call for the vote. Mrs. Forbes?
Yes.
Ms. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
I'm a yes, so 4 in the affirmative, 1 absent. Meeting's passed. Old business, I don't see anything for old business on my agenda, new business, so let's move to subcommittees and study groups. Looks like we will ask Mr. Kevin May, Athletic Director, come up and talk to us about high school fall sports. Mr. May?
Good evening. Thanks for having me here.
Kevin, maybe just slide that mic
Oh,
down
sure.
towards you. We'll get, okay.
There we go. Okay, better? All right. Thank you. We had, pretty lengthy, I think, addition to your material with my proposal, as well as, I believe, the DESI and MIA guidelines and the EEA guidelines from the state has been put forth. We are looking, to run athletics this fall with boys and girls soccer, field hockey, cross country, and golf. The proposal I did give you, there was a change as of Friday. And if you noticed on the pods, Blackstone Millville was initially on it, but that was quite a drive, and they were supposed to be geographical. So working with the athletic committee, it was actually a change. Blackstone Millville is now out of the pod. We've added Auburn. So obviously a much closer ride, for the kids. And I think the other question that, some people have had is, the start date. MIA did say we could start on September 18th. However, the Southern Western County League had decided to push that back 2 weeks. So we're looking at a start date of October 5th with the season that runs right through the November 20th to do that. There's quite a bit of information there. I don't know if you had any specific questions.
We'll be asking the school committee to vote this evening. As part of the DESI guidelines require that if a district is offering remote learning, and we are starting with remote learning to its high school students, and you wish them to participate in any type of regularly scheduled sports season, and we have an abbreviated sports schedule, then this must be approved by the school committee. So in your packet also, you have a memo from me with a vote that we would recommend that the school committee take this evening.
Members, any questions? Yes, Mrs. Forbes?
So, we have that little van or bus that we bought, and I think it was specifically for small teams such as the golf team. I read in the transportation section of your proposal that they be limiting 25, and I know the golf team is somewhere less than 12.
Right.
How are you gonna handle that, a full-size bus?
Well, if, the transportation recommendations are one person per seat, and if the team is too large to accommodate that, then we would have to get a full bus for that.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha, okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? Concerns? Anybody like to make a vote, motion to take a vote?
I'd like to make a
Can that be
motion.
done now?
Yes, you can read the vote recommendation if you would, Mrs. Forbes?
Sorry, I'm gonna have to find it.
Is it right here? Is it this
Yes,
one?
yes, at the very bottom.
Where is it?
I can read it. The district's athletic director, Kevin May, has indicated that in accordance with the DESI and MIA joint guidance, he's recommending that the following fall sports begin their practice on October 5th with modifications to achieve level 3 play interim team competition. Boys and girls soccer, girls JV and varsity, boys varsity. Field hockey, JV and varsity. Golf, varsity. Cross country, varsity. Vote, we recommend that the above fall sports be allowed to begin their seasons on October 5th with the modifications outlined in MIA guidance in order to achieve level 3 play, inter-team competition. I make that motion.
I second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote. Mrs. Forbes?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Burke? Yes.
Um,
I'm a yes, and one absent, so 4 in the affirmative, 1 absent. The plan passes.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Policy Subcommittee, guess I will turn it over to Pal. Expense and travel reimbursements and the use of school buildings fees.
So the first one, expense and travel reimbursements, the policy subcommittee looked at this a while ago, and we have updated it for you folks with some new language that's in yellow. And be happy to answer any questions or concerns that you guys might have. And I don't know if you feel like waiving the first read or. So I mean,
You making a motion to move?
I would love to make a motion to waive the first read and accept policy DKC expense and travel reimbursements.
I would second that. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Discussion? I'll call for the vote. Mrs. Forbes?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Burke? Yes. I'm a yes, 4 in the affirmative, 1 absent. DKC, expense and travel reimbursements is passed.
Okay, and then we have policy EDC-E, use of school buildings and athletic facility fees. And there has been one change in yellow, and it's just for our custodial and cafeteria personnel, just to align the amount per hour per contract, because there was an update in contract recently. And again, I'd like to waive the first reading and make a motion for policy EDC-E, use of school buildings and athletics facilities fees to be.
I'll second that.
All right, it's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote. Mrs. Forbes?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Burke? Yes. I'm a yes too. That's 4 yeses, 1 absent. EDC-E, use of school building and athletic fees. Amendment has passed. Business office, Mr. Ledoux, if you could come forward. Capital requests, looks like first on our plate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carnicchioli, members of the committee. My apologies, I wasn't able to make the last meeting, so I just kind of want to go back over maybe some explanations over this capital list I had presented and just some explanations. This capital list that I presented, I had given you part of your packet, is 7 years. I want to show the first 2 years, the past 2 years, for just projects that have been completed, just so everybody's on the same page. I want to go through each item that's been requested on here and just kind of identify the funding source. If we want, we can come back and kind of go over any questions or concerns. Now, this is kind of a mix. Some of these items have been identified to be paid from our revolving funds, and the other ones I'm looking for authorization to give to the Finance Committee as part of the True Towns Capital. So the first item I have is a football field scoreboard. This obviously coming from our athletics department for $23,000. The funding source I have is the athletics revolving fund. I believe there was talk of it being dedicated to, I think Commander Maisley, maybe talks of the family donating maybe some funds towards that. To be honest, I don't know where that stands. I just kind of wanted to put it out there that we do have the money in the revolving fund if the committee wanted to pursue this project. And that's outside of the dedication can still happen however you want to do it. I'm just saying that we do have the money to replace that if the committee desires. The next item I have is food warmers at both Barton and the middle school. This is more just to keep up with maintaining and replacing items for the food service program. That's in the amount of $18,000. And we do have the money in the food service fund. If you remember correctly, we did put, I believe, almost $200,000 in there from that was left over from last fiscal year. So there's quite an there's enough to replace the food warmers, if you will. And the final item I have that's not truly a big ticket facility item is the hardware in the OMS bathrooms. And that includes the partitions, the mirrors, and the soap dispensers. I did provide pictures. As you can see, they're pretty rusted and rotted, and they could really use an upgrade. And that also may be funded through our French River revolving fund, which can only be used for building improvements. Down towards the bottom of this list, I kind of separated out the building and facility requests, because these items we work with our facilities department to identify, because a lot of times there's things that we're unaware of, like maybe a failing piece of machinery or something in the building that the facilities department has brought forward. Before we get into that, the very first item I have on here is an LED sign for the, I guess what would be the front of these two schools here. I want to say just the student activity or student donations, I want to say they donated just over $10,000. So the request is to use money from a revolving fund. I believe I identified the building rentals revolving fund to come up with the other half of the money for that. And again, what I'm looking for from the committee is just authorization to pursue these projects. We're not really getting into what it's going to say or anything like that. It's just to start the process. The next item I have is the bathroom countertops at both elementary schools. Now, I have changed this since the last time you folks met to include Barton. I failed to include that on the first round, but there's no reason why this $40,000 figure can't take care of both the laminate countertops at both bathrooms. I am still working with the facilities department on a true quote, if you will, as to what it's going to be to fix that. We've been going back and forth. We're going to fix, is it just going to be the countertop? Is it going to be the whole, the sinks and everything? But again, I'm pretty confident 40 grand should be able to do both of the main bathrooms at the elementary schools. And that again is to be funded through the French River revolving fund, which is for building improvements. The next few items I have, this is for authorization to submit to the Finance Committee as far as the capital programs. And some of these are repeat items. The first one is foundation repairs to both the elementary schools. The rebar that's in those foundations is rusting and it's breaking apart the foundation. We did receive a quote for $78,000 to fix that problem. And again, I would recommend we go to the Finance Committee as part of the capital programs to fund that. The siding repairs at both the elementary schools, if you notice, the hardy board on the side is peeling. It's been like that for years. There's water getting behind it, and it's just making it worse. So essentially, what we're looking for is to replace all of that siding on the elementary schools. While I don't foresee it being funded this year, I still want to put it out there as it's still a problem, and it's just going to get worse. One addition from the last time you folks met is boiler replacement at the middle school. Now, we did have one boiler die roughly 2 or 3 years ago. Well, when I had started, it came to my attention that it just did not work at all, so I couldn't tell you when it died, to be honest with you. But when we checked with the manufacturer, they said that those boilers have a 10-year life expectancy. So they were installed roughly 2007, so that at the end of life. So we replaced one, and they all are working. However, the facilities department, in my conversation with them, had recommended that we do replace a second boiler there, just in case, as they are at the end of life. Parking lot crack fill. This is just to extend the life of all the parking areas at all the schools. And I did get a quote from DPW for 50 grand to do the crack fill at all the schools. Chafee School flooring replacement. This is something we did a little bit of this past summer. But I do have a rough estimate of $67,000 to finish the flooring in the remainder of the Chafee School. So we just did the kindergarten hallway this past summer, and that was roughly 30 grand just to do 7 rooms. So to complete the rest of the building, and that is to replace the carpet with tile flooring. I do have on here the former coffee building feasibility. Initially, we wanted to do a study to see what the future of that building would be, maybe have a engineer come in and see, you know, what needs to be repaired. At this point in time, I would recommend the committee turn it over to the town. I'll leave it at that. It looks like it's pretty far gone. It's gonna need a lot of repairs. With the ACE program being moved at the high school, personally, I don't see a reason why you would repurpose the building, but I'll defer to the committee on that one. So again, for the cost on that, I did have just a to be determined. We didn't want to really have a cost of what it would be for a feasibility study, nor for the repairs. It might be too far gone at this point, but I'll leave it at that. So let me just back up. That item is not to go to the finance committee. That's more of just maybe a discussion for the school committee. The Barton School flooring replacement. I estimate about $108,000. Now, we have not started that building, but this is to replace, just like the Chafee School, all the carpeting in all the classrooms. And also, let me just remind the committee, all these building items, with the exception of the LED sign, these are all health and safety related. If you folks would like to prioritize these in any order, I mean, that'd be fantastic. However, the way I have this recommended is just these items for this year. There are items you'll see below for the upcoming years. However, they were kind of put on the back burner just because they weren't directly related to health and safety. So the final two items I have for roughly $25,000 each is the electronic door access at both the elementary schools. Just to back up a little bit, the high school has been completed. We did all of the entrances here. They're updated with electronic access, that's the fob reader. We do have the funding for the middle school. I'm in the process of starting that. I just haven't scheduled anything yet. So again, this is the request of funding to do the two elementary schools. That's all I have as recommended for this upcoming year. Again, I'm looking for a few things. If the committee would like to prioritize any of these items, we're certainly happy to do so. The second thing would be authorization to submit these capital items to the finance committee. And then the third thing is authorization to pursue the projects that we have that we know we can do with our revolving funds. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any questions, comments.
Board, yeah, September.
So I just want to be sure that I understood what you said. Parking lot crack fill, and I would assume Barton's overflow lot would be being done by the town's DPW,
Correct.
and it's going to cost us $120,000.
For both projects.
But aren't they responsible for the maintenance of our lots and sidewalks?
I'd say that's fair to say, yes. If they suddenly were in such bad shape, they'd be the first person I would call to repair them.
So typically, either it would be Sean Duvall, who would submit them as articles, or it could be the school department that submits them because you believe it's a priority for you, and therefore it signals to them that it should be a priority because the school committee is recognizing it. But either way, I think sometimes they'll come from the town side for all departments, but a lot of times it comes from your side also.
That's disappointing to hear. I just wanted to be sure. Well, because I guess I would assume that that is something that we wouldn't really need to expend out of our budget. That's really more if they're maintaining our property, that we shouldn't need to fund the repairs on that.
I could put it another way. So either way, whether the committee supports it or not, I think that DPW would probably move this forward on their own to say, well, geez, you know, this is something we might want to look at, and leave it to the finance committee to maybe prioritize the request. It's one of those things I felt it was, you know, courtesy to bring it to the school committee's attention.
And I do appreciate that, and I
Yeah.
do see things on here that I feel are a priority based on the health and safety. So, thank you for answering that.
So Justin, would I be correct in saying then we are looking to submit that to the finance committee to say it needs to be done? It's their job to determine if the town side pays for it, if the school side pays for it?
There's no side that pays for it, just the town.
Right.
So the capital programs, at the end of every year, we have what's left over in everyone's budget, I'll put it that way. So all town departments, it all gets certified as free cash. And that free cash can be used for any purpose. It's normally used for one-time expenses like capital. So what happens is once that money becomes free cash, the finance committee is given a dollar amount, and they're presented with all of these needs of all departments. So we're kind of thrown into a big pool of everybody, and they'll prioritize what needs to be done. And that's why a lot of times, that's some of these items, I'll recommend let's do it through a revolving account, because it's more in our control. We can control when it gets done. We're not waiting for their approval. That's why I put a couple items aside. But then the rest of the items, more the big ticket items, I would say put forward to them. So it's nobody's budget per se. It all kind of comes out of the same pot, if you will.
So you're just looking for us to recommend to the finance committee that it needs to be addressed?
Yes.
Oftentimes, Mr. Burke, when the FinCom meets on reviewing all capital requests, they would ask for a representative of each department to come in to advocate and explain the need, and then they vote as to which they feel they can afford to fund. And that's usually, I think
Thank you.
they've changed that time schedule, Justin?
Correct. So the town charter dictates that all these items are in for September 1st. However, I believe I was given a date of sometime in October. And normally October we'll start meeting with the finance committee, start going over and again advocating for what the needs of the district are.
So, I know we spoke about this in the past. I think it was around January 8th. I submitted a question to our former superintendent in regards to a proposal to MSBA, looking for funds for certain projects. And one thing that was discussed back then as a possibility for an accelerated repair grant was the floors at OMS.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know there was a little bit of back and forth with it could be a potential capital request. I guess one concern that I have is we have MSBA and we have things like boilers and floors and things like that that I would think would come out, come under the envelope of having some of that grant funding.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of wondering why we haven't pursued or made headway in trying to, look for some of those funds, especially since, MSBA has increased their amount of money in the pot for school districts. So could you speak a little bit to that about right now?
Certainly.
Yeah.
So the impression that I get is last year when a lot of these items were put forth to the town, they looked at it and said, you guys are looking at millions of dollars in repairs. I don't think we can fund that. And I was given the directive, well, go ahead and submit it to MSBA. So, in which we did. We had you folks sign off on it, the Board of Selectmen. Every facility-related item was submitted to MSBA. We have not heard anything back, but at the same time, we have not pursued it. I have not tried to reach out to anybody to see if any of these things were approved. Typically, through MSBA, they do roofs, boilers, windows. Typically, those are the typical projects they do. It's not. However, I have seen them do other things. So I guess from our point of view, we said, well, let's submit everything and see if we get anything. So again, at this time, we have not heard anything back. That doesn't mean necessarily that it's dead in the water, but that's just the status update. All this has been submitted to MSBA.
Right, I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, like when we submitted things, we still needed stuff, information like potential bids and items like that. Yes, no? And would we have qualified without having those additional items added to our application, or?
That's something I would have to check with them.
Okay.
Typically, they want you to work with an engineer or some
Right.
type of architect to kind of bundle all these items together and say, listen, this school needs this amount in repairs to kind of do a lot of the legwork for them, is my understanding. And then they would say, well, geez, is it more cost effective to build a new school? Is it or more cost effective to do the repairs that they've requested?
So, if I might just add a couple of things. So MSBA will look at two categories. One is projects that they consider to be, quote, renovations. Those projects generally deal with areas that Justin has identified as windows, roofs, boilers. They look at life expectancy, they look at the age. And if you meet that quota, they prioritize within all of these submissions, those that have aged out, or closest to, I think it was, roof used to be 25, 30 years for roof for life expectancy. They also balance it looking at what the tobacco tax revenue is, which funds it primarily. And so, given where we are this year, they're looking at projects that they already have approved who are in the mix. Typically, they are not going to approve probably some of the items that you submitted. They will look at extensive issues, and if you fall into the, they will notify you if you are a district that they feel meets some of the criteria. Then they send out their team to evaluate that, but that still doesn't mean that you will get the funding, because based on what you submit, they send out, their electrical or their HVAC people or whatever to ensure that that indeed is the case, and you do need to replace, repair, whatever. I don't know, usually there's a notification timeline and process. Once you submit, you'll get notified if you are moving to what they call the next stage in the process. And I don't know when you submitted it, was it last spring?
It was just prior to COVID, so I want to say early
The
March.
question may be that
it was
the
February
funding,
14th.
because the state still hasn't approved its budget. I think everything is working very slow, probably slowly, including MSBA and what funds they would even have available to them. That would be my hunch, but we can certainly check.
Yeah, we can certainly follow up on the
Follow
status
up.
of that. I guess, rule of thumb that I always go through, I wouldn't limit yourselves. I would say, oh, well, MSBA could pay for it, so why not? You know what I mean? I would submit to both Finance Committee, look at your revolving funds, MSBA. I do it all, and hopefully we're able to accomplish through one of the sources.
I just want the finance committee to be well aware that we have pursued an
Yes.
application to
Sure.
MSBA, because that's something they frequently ask, or, are we on top of our game, looking for money and resources, and
Right.
we truly are. So I think that proposal was submitted February 14th of 2020, if I'm looking at the email that I have here. I know that was the due date, and MSBA put out, a request for proposals on January 8th. So I know that was something that we were looking into. I just, I wanted an update, and I wanted the FinCom to receive an update too, when we put forth our requests. Should we kind of share what's a priority to us individually as members, or kind of, how would you like to go
You
about
have
doing
about
it?
a little under $850,000 in requests.
All right, so I just wanted to ask Justin a couple clarifying questions. So, and this is a better layout than what we went to the finance committee with last year, and I know I'm not certainly holding you accountable for that. That was the leadership prior to Dr. Nash. It was, but I'm glad that we've straightened that out. So I guess my question is, any of the capital requests, did anything get submitted to the committee yet last year? Did we get anything that got on to for a vote at town meeting? I don't think we
Yes.
did, correct?
Yes, there's quite a few things.
Yeah.
So the math curriculum was approved last year.
Right.
Oh, okay.
The fiber switches
Yeah.
for $38,000.
Oh, the grease trap, okay.
The grease
I see
traps,
it, I see
the
it.
OMS electronic door access, and refinished the gym floor.
Okay.
The Chromebooks for Barton School, that was funded through ourselves. We did pick that up last year during the COVID shutdown because we needed laptops.
Okay.
Down the bottom, Barton roof repairs, that was just a small, just to fix a small section of roof, I want to say it's 10 by 10 area. The OMS asbestos flooring study, so that is to bring in an engineer and actually get a hard, opinion on as to where we stand with that. So that was funded, it's just a matter. Now, these projects were funded, doesn't mean they've been completed yet, we're in the process of, as you can see with the track, we're still working on some from last year, and it's kind of a mix. The emergency exit between here and the North Cemetery, that has been funded. 30 grand for a Chafee playground repairs. So excuse me, this says 40. It was actually 30 grand that was approved to that. The remote access, that's part of the HVAC at Chafee. That's to control it remotely and or to have a computerized system versus if it goes down, somebody has to go there and fix it. Excuse me, the last item here was some rooftop units at the high school. There was 3 rooftop units that had failed. So there was money put aside to fund those.
All right, so So if I look, just quick ballpark figure, it looked like about 335,000 for all of those projects.
Correct.
And then the ones you identified, it looked like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is about 850,000. Where do you recommend us kind of looking at? I mean, that's a pretty significant increase. Is that too big of a jump to be thinking about? Where should we be steering, in your opinion, our efforts towards?
So the scoreboard, the food warmers, and the bathroom
Yeah, I
partitions,
had
and
no-
I would say revolving funds on those.
And I didn't even, the only ones I'm talking about, Justin, are the ones, the capital
Yep.
ones that I identified on the building and facility. You mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them.
Yeah. So the foundation repairs, the 78,000, the siding repairs at the elementary schools, the boiler replacement for 90 grand, parking lot fill, the Chafee School flooring replacement, Barton School flooring replacement, and the electronic door access at both the elementary schools. Those 8 items is what I would
Right.
recommend moving to the finance committee.
So then you're recommending a $500,000 jump from what we requested last year, what we received? That's all I was asking. Is it in our best interest to make that significant of a jump in request number?
Yes.
Just asking.
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I-
that comes from, if you look at what the other departments request, a lot of it is, let's put it all out there and kind of see what we get. So I would recommend putting all of that. There are additional needs, don't get me wrong, we could put it all forward, but, I mean, I would try to be a little frugal here and address the things that are most directly relating to health and safety issues.
So the other things that you have, are they identified in the years following?
Correct, so.
Right, because
this
that's
is
how you
for-
have it laid out, right?
Yes, so
So
these items that
nothing-
I'm talking about are for fiscal '22, so it'd be for next fiscal year. The items after that, well, let's see, just a brief timeline. For '23, fiscal '23, I'd say the netting and backstops for the softball field near the police station. Football field feasibility for a turf field. I don't even have a dollar, we're not prepared to even look at that yet.
No.
The Barton overflow lot, I would push that out another year. Refinish the gym floors at the elementary schools, I'd push that out another year until we get more information on that. If it can be repaired, or if we truly need to replace it. Carpeting here at the high school, dugouts, some of these are more, what I wanna say, just, would they be nice? Yes, but are they mission critical? Not at this time. It's something we could certainly look more into. Same thing, kind of up top, if you look at some of the other items that aren't really building related, with some blinds, maybe custodial equipment. The OHS bleachers, those have been on for a while. However, at this time, I want to push it out just a little bit longer, just because I want to look at what we can do to repair them versus replacing all of the bleachers.
And what is your take on what it's gonna look like fiscally next year? I mean, lots of talk, I know it was all preliminary a few months ago, but in conversations you've had with other business managers, where are all your minds at as far as the monies that are potentially not going to be coming in, or the struggles that districts are gonna have next year? And does it make sense for us to push this big number? I mean, I guess the worst case is it's a no, but.
I would push a bigger number this year, because the free cash that we're talking about is left over from last year. So I think that will be less at the end of this year, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. So I think
Yeah.
next year there'll be less to go around. So I'd personally rather see it all like a big lump kind of go forward, and however the finance committee can fund it, because again, this is coming from all departments. I mean,
So, Justin, if I might,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
sure.
I think oftentimes, however, and I think my question to the school committee would be, which of the 8 items, if you could only have 4 of those, would be a priority? Because if we appear before the finance committee, it would be important for us to echo to them what you would consider to be the most important, rather than to have the finance committee make that decision. I certainly think we should recommend all 8, because they're all either health, safety, or structural issues with our buildings.
You're asking us to
But
rank
is-
them?
But to even rank them, so that if they were to say, we only can give the school department 400,000, I would rather us be able to say to them at that meeting, and our school committee has indicated these are their priorities then. Would that make sense, Justin?
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
When do you need this by?
Off the top of my head, I'd say early October.
All right, so we could table this, have some more of a discussion, maybe.
Well, let me put it this way. If I could get authorization, please, to submit them all, and if you want to follow up with a ranking after the fact, because we won't be meeting with them until October, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes
So
sense.
I could submit them, and
Submit all
then,
8, but just know that
But
we
you
will
prioritize
You can make a
after the
note
fact.
there that's gonna be prioritized, so
Right,
it's not on the wall.
yeah.
Okay.
just because like I said, the charter requires it September 1st, so I'd like to get it in sooner than
Yeah.
later.
Is there any question? Yeah, Mr. Burke?
I don't have a question, I was gonna make a motion. that we
Okay.
submit those
Any other
items.
questions or comments regarding this capital request plan?
No, I mean, I think that there's some things that we could definitely say though are a priority tonight. That would be pretty easy to star, but that's just my personal feeling. I mean, it might make sense to have Mr. Coonan, obviously discuss this as well with us, and I do want his voice to be heard, but I mean, there's certain things too that I would say fall very low on the rank of a priority for me, like, repair and cracks and filling of a road is not a priority compared to the foundation of a building. You know what I mean? So there are certain things where I think we can say easily that should go to the bottom. That's all, just to give you a little direction.
So do you want to put something out there?
I mean, I think it's easy for myself to say parking lot crack fill, for all schools is the lowest priority for me.
I would second that.
We now know number 8, probably. So I think we've got time to
So
do
just-
this, because I think typically, and again, I don't know the practice here, but generally FinComs invite the departments in to hear their concerns or why this is on the list. I'm assuming we would be invited to that meeting.
Yes.
And we would say, speaking on behalf of you, that's probably gonna happen in October when they start getting into budget, maybe later, since we're so late with our next fiscal year budget. And then it won't be in probably until February, March, when they really know what they're gonna be able to use.
Right.
For,
Yes, I agree. I just think we want to be prepared. We
Yeah.
want to have all that out because we did not look really good last year when we did this.
Yeah.
So I know there is a motion to approve.
To approve these items to be sent to the finance committee? Is that what you're looking for?
I second that motion.
Okay, any discussion? Calling for the vote, September.
Yes.
Pal?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
I'm a yes. 4 in the affirmative, 1 absent. We have approved those 8 items to go on capital. Could we put on for the next agenda, maybe a ranking discussion? So maybe the members could come with their order.
okay, it's on the 28th.
And I'm sorry, would you like to continue the discussion then about the other items I have funded
Yes,
through the revolving
stay up
funds?
there. Oh,
And you don't have to prioritize those, are more, again, it's like an internal thing where
That's just a question of.
like we have the money, we could
Right.
do
Moving
this.
forward. Yeah.
I would personally, like to see the bathroom repairs at OMS be like a priority. And, certain things, I'm imagining the food warmers have to be a priority because you're looking for those pieces of equipment to do what you have to do this year. Or no?
No, we currently have working ones, it's just the food service director is just nervous that they could
She's nervous
break at
about
any
it,
time,
but we've got
you know.
working ones right now.
so.
So it's kind of like insurance, make
Yes,
you
we've
have
got
that.
insurance, right.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I do not know what the life expectancy of a food warmer is, so I can't tell you.
yeah. I mean, I'd hate to buy food warmers that we don't need, but at the same time, I don't know how hard it is to get this type of equipment now.
Relatively fast.
I think that should be pretty easy
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
warmers.
so could you just give us just a quick background again? You said on the football scoreboard, 23,295 funded through athletics, plenty of money in there. Could you just elaborate on what that means?
Correct, in our athletic, and I'll just give you ballpark figures, I can update you. I did
Yeah.
provide the committee a preliminary report of fund balances for the end of fiscal 20, and what that means, that's the balance in every single one of your accounts, if you will, all your revolving accounts. I'll provide that again a second time. I want to say off the top of my head, athletics revolving has roughly $100,000 in it to pick that up.
Well,
And then the Barton Warmers.
And that's
Ole Miss,
18,000.
18, and you said there's about 200,000?
About 200,000 in food service, so I feel as though they could easily pick that up. However, also when I say that, just given the unknowns with COVID, we might need to shift things a little bit, so I wouldn't recommend that you spend, the entire 200,000, but an $18,000 expense for food warmers, that would make sense to me.
So just on the food budget, on that side of it, are we at level 0? We don't have any deficit? I know they had been talking in the past, we were down
Correct, so.
tens of thousands, no, maybe not tens, but thousands of
Historically-
dollars in the hole. Are we,
You usually lose about 50,000 a year. Usually end the year with 50,000 in the red. Now you've had a pretty healthy fund balance for years. That's been kind of chipped away at year after year after year. So now we get to just roughly a year or two ago. Now there's no money left in the account, and I can already predict based on looking at it that you would end the year with $50,000 in the hole. This past year, fiscal 20 was a little bit of an anomaly. It was actually I don't say a good thing that COVID happened, but I'll say the USDA free meal program was actually a good thing because we actually had a lot more participation than what we had originally thought. So that was able to more or less pay for the salaries of keeping the staff on throughout the closure. But as a contingency, we also put another 200,000 in that account because we thought that, well, geez, if we're just paying people and not selling lunches, you just it's going to run out. It's not going to last forever. But that had put us in a good spot for this year. And like I said, we have $200,000 in the account. I certainly wouldn't recommend just spending it all at once. But again, if they need food warmers for $18,000, I would recommend.
well, it doesn't sound like they need them. It sounds like they want to have a backup. So
Correct.
I guess this could be a conversation for another night, but it's concerning to me, and maybe I'm not as in tune to food services as I should be, but to have a $50,000 deficit each year, and that's just like common? Like, why are we in that predicament, and is that common across every nutritional program in every district? Because
I'm gonna say a lot of schools do run a deficit in the program, and what that means is your general fund, what you normally would use for operational costs for the schools, normally would pick up like the food service director's salary or pick up some salaries to kind of help offset those expenses. What is it due to? It's mainly my number one, I would say, due to lack of participation. You need and what does that come from? Well, probably not so
Quality.
great food choices. There's a lot that goes into it.
2 years ago, when I was interim, I had projected that we would be running, after meeting with Justin, looking at our budget, 45 to 50,000, which was the reason why that following year in your budget was the salary of the food service director.
right.
For some reason, that didn't happen this year, but you could see the projection that you were going to be running based on the last 3 or 4 years, a $40,000 to $50,000 deficit. So you would need to then, take out of your general fund that, which is the reason why we took the salary, but that did not happen this year. I mean, we were lucky at the end of this year of what we had left over that we're able to do that. The concern we have is, of course, we only have half of our students coming when we go to hybrid. And what will that look like? We're also competing because we're now serving lunch very differently. So that could very well be a concern as we move forward. What happens and what our lunch sales look like, we may have to look at staffing down the road to see whether we continue to staff the way we are currently staffing. And we also have the balance right now that could be enough. We don't know. So that's one of the reasons why I think recommendation was back at the end of June to put that money into food service so that we would have that anticipating. But not uncommon to run in the red in food service programs, to answer your question.
yeah, no, I know
Not
it's not a
uncommon,
moneymaker, but I mean, we have
but
to figure
usually
out a
you
way
look to break even,
Right.
and you call that a good year when you break
Right.
even.
So consuming the director's salary would almost guarantee you'd be close to even every year.
Yes,
Correct.
yes, you
Somehow
put it in your
building that
regular
into the
budget,
regular
right.
budget.
So it may very well be that we'll look at that, moving forward,
Yep.
projecting on what's gonna happen.
In the
this year.
FREC revolving account, Justin, approximately?
The balance you have in there is roughly $100,000.
Good.
I have spent a little bit out of that for some of the supplies we needed for, to get the buildings ready, such as signage, dispensers, a few things, so it's around $100,000.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Val?
One comment, and kind of, it's also a question at the same time, is in regards to the football field scoreboard. I know we were supposed to have a dedication to Commander Maisley. It's been an ongoing discussion for years now. And so my thought goes, if this is a capital request, it seems like this would be, I mean, I guess we could pay with the revolving funds that we have, but I just don't want to see this postponed more. I feel like every year it's postponed, and that dedication's not happening. And we have the funds to be able to, you know, get this accomplished. And I would like to see that be something that we do. I mean,
So.
I just don't
He's
understand.
recommending it through, he's
Right.
recommending it through this fund, so if we get a motion on the floor,
And the good news, if we run it, Kevin's not here, but if I remember correctly, football could be part of the floating season, which runs between February and April. So there could be a possibility that that would be an appropriate time, you know, to dedicate it at that time.
so make a motion to include all three.
I'd like
Yes,
to make a motion to include these 3 items to be funded as Justin has indicated.
I second that motion.
Any discussion?
Excuse me, those are just the items at top, on top of the spreadsheet here, so that's the scoreboard, food warmers, and the OMS bathrooms,
Well,
the
just,
hardware.
Mr. Burke will read.
Was there another one you were looking for, Justin?
Um,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, my apologies, just down towards the bottom, and I probably should have combined these together a little bit more clearly. The LED sign,
Oh,
and I mean, again, if the committee wants to wait, that's,
If I may, I'd rather wait on the LED sign, and I know that we have, you know, going back to the bathroom countertops at Chafee and Barton, and it says it may be funded through the FREC revolving fund. I really think that that needs to be a priority when we're talking about health and safety, and it's, you know, it's a lot that we're taking out of that revolving fund, but these are like projects that I think just need to be up to snuff and completed for our children that are going into buildings, and they're just, you know, they're dilapidated right now. Honestly, our bathrooms are just embarrassing. So I want, you know, to see Chafee and Barton be a priority just as much as the middle school. And I don't want that to necessarily have to wait to go, you know, in front of FinCom for approval. I want us to like get the ball moving, because otherwise I think it's just gonna be like another year or who knows how much longer, and we've waited enough, personally. That's just my opinion.
Do you just want to specify Corey the 3?
yeah.
So I
I'm sure
kind of
it's
made
only
it
3.
4 by saying that, but.
But Justin, if I'm reading this correctly, the LED sign comes from a different account than the bathroom countertops. They
Correct.
Cannot come, those don't compete with each other, correct?
Yes.
correct. That LED sign, half would be paid through the student activity, the donations. Graduating classes have left money towards the sign, and then the rest, I was gonna pick up through building rentals.
Okay. But the bathroom countertops, Chafee and Barton, and the OMS bathroom partitions, mirrors, soap dispensers are in the same account?
Correct,
And you
correct.
said that account currently has about
100,000.
so that's 65,000. Is that, in your opinion, too much to take out of that account at one time?
No,
Can only be used for building maintenance anyway. So
Okay.
it can't be used for anything else, so it's an appropriate use of the funds.
So then I think my motion might be for 5 items. My math is correct. Look, I'm all over the place, but here we go. I'm gonna say the football field scoreboard, the food warmers, the OMS bathroom partitions, mirrors, soap dispensers, the Oxford Public Schools LED sign, and the bathroom countertops for Chafee and Barton.
A motion on the floor,
I second that motion.
second, any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mrs. Forbes?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
I am also a yes, 1 absent, 4 yes. Those 5 items pass.
Thank you.
Thank you, we'll start those projects immediately.
God bless you. Thank you, thank you.
Good job, Ed. Good job, Ed.
Thank you, Corey.
All right, Mr. Ledoux, if you can stay up there, facility rentals.
So the next item I have for the committee is, since COVID has happened, and the governor closed the schools, we have not allowed any facility rentals. And what that is outside organizations coming in to rent it. Some of the folks that have made it on policy or heard facility rentals, we always talk about it. So we have suspended that temporarily due to COVID. Obviously, we don't want groups of people coming in the building, especially when the governor was very clear that the schools are closed, so therefore we haven't been able to rent the building, if you will. Also, with respect to athletic organizations, that's our primary group is basketball leagues and independent private leagues coming in. They haven't been able to practice. So what I have before the committee is we're looking for a vote as to whether or not we should resume building rentals. The first thing I'd like to say about it is how we've been treating. Now, we were approached by a few groups, and the approach has been, please get approval from our local Board of Health first before we'll look at the application. Now, that's for obvious reasons. If the Board of Health will allow the activity, well, then we'll look at it. So that's the first thing I'd like to continue, even if it's temporary during COVID. I mean, I would still recommend that the Board of Health weigh in on if it's safe for the group to be doing whatever they're renting the building for. And the second item would be to just increase the amount of time custodians are required after for additional cleanup. And I would love to put a hard and fast time to that, but I can't. It really depends on the scope and what if it's a group of people playing Frisbee, well, geez, you're not going to need a custodian to clean up after that. However, if it's a large gathering of people inside the building, well, that's going to require more of a deep cleaning afterwards. So we'd kind of have to play that one by ear as they come in. But what I'm looking for is a committee to vote either way, whether or not to allow building rentals, facility use. Again, at this time, we have not allowed any due to COVID, but we have been approached by a few groups, and I would like to give them an answer. Myself included in a lot of the administrators, we haven't really felt comfortable going ahead and just allowing a group without a higher authority here kind of giving us their blessing, so.
Any comments, questions?
Just one question, sort of discussion with Dave. I do believe that when the custodial contract was finalized, we did put in provisions for additional cleaning for groups. So there is some language already in there that would cover us. And my personal opinion is that we should probably open up to groups if it's safe to do so.
Okay.
But again, I think that's already a provision in there for the additional hours for cleaning.
Okay, I'll have to review either the school committee policy or the
Yeah, I think
contract.
what we
That was
just
it.
discussed,
Is it in the policy?
the policy this evening, and we approved it, and it makes mention to the contract that was
Yep.
signed.
It's
Okay.
changing contract just tonight. Yep.
Well, that was the hourly rate, but
That
there was
was an
language to the
But there was,
before
we
and
changed
after.
the language to say
yeah.
at least a minimum of this.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know if it was captured in that, but
Yeah,
Right,
it's
but we do have something in writing that we just need to be sure we're.
Okay.
So, I got a couple of questions, a couple of concerns. There's quite a few restrictions for our own athletes, if you read through what Mr. May presented tonight. So obviously, they take first and most precedent for us, obviously, as a board. I would also be curious to know what the protocols for when we are back in hybrid, when is the building closing? Because, Oxford High School cannot probably be open like it used to be, right, pre-COVID. There's gonna have to be a drop-stop time that these buildings close, because the custodial staffs that are gonna be in the evenings, I'm imagining, are gonna have to push their hours up and be working day shifts, more so than they were probably just exclusively evening, just to help with cleaning protocols when we have kids in the building. So, I want to know what that's gonna look like before I even entertain bringing outsiders into our buildings. I don't even know what it's gonna look like for us in the building. And how are we gonna take care of our kids first, but then our schools, so that they're ready to go the next morning. And, we don't have a custodian, waiting till 9 o'clock to clean up. So I guess my question is to Dr. Nash, what is the stop time for buildings, particularly the high school, which gets probably a lot of use? Has that been a discussion?
We have not discussed allowing any kinds of, student activities to go on at the end of the day, partly because in most instances, and I know Dave can speak to it, or Bob, most of the activities anyway are going to become remote. A club or that may end up being a remote activity, so the need for students to be in a building has changed dramatically. So I don't envision that we're going to be having buildings open in the same capacity with students attending, clubs, things like that might be going on. We know at the middle school, for example, there are no sports that will be going on at all. And that's a primary, if you will, activity for a lot of middle school students. So Dave, you want to jump in? Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
Come all the way up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
right now, so when school is open, students leave. The clubs and activities know that any type of meeting for now will be virtual. The locker rooms are closed, so athletes will not come into the building. So I'm not quite sure, how we could do this, but I certainly would recommend, if we could, I know we have some very loyal and, weekend people, maybe can we open up starting for the weekends, where the custodians, that's extra, that's not the custodian on duty, it's, and those groups will pay the custodians to do the deep cleaning after them, and just make sure that they're just using parts of the building, like not classrooms or anything like that, but, so if we wanted to, just like the state reopens, Dr. Nash, we wanna do it slowly, gradually, if we wanna let weekend use, I think that will work, but nighttime, because we have one custodian and a part-time custodian, I think that would be a stretch.
Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Corey.
David, you're saying if there was the weekend activities, those groups are paying for that extra custodial time. The same thing be true for an evening activity, even though we had a custodian here, if there was somebody asked to use the gym for a practice for a basketball league, like Justin said, that organization still needs to pay for that custodial time?
Well, I mean,
I can answer that. Not typically, not if there's already a custodian on duty, unless it's a large scale event where we have, hundreds of people, if you will. Then we would require more staff. But if it's just a small group, as long as the custodian's already on duty, we wouldn't call in a second.
I
Yeah,
think
so I think to Dave's point, then our custodians are going to be very busy
Right.
dealing with
Right.
COVID cleaning in the evenings. I think it might be
So
a
the
smart idea to
The
start with the
difference
weekends.
this year is that things have radically changed, and you can't grab a custodian at night to go and help out just because
Right.
a group happens to be in. So I would think that, two things. One, if the safety plan that is submitted, if the committee agrees that we should continue in that manner before we even talk with groups, that I can't envision that there isn't gonna be some additional cost that you're gonna have to pass on, because I don't think anyone wants a custodian who should be doing some other cleaning to be doing, picking up or just locking up after someone, a group. Until we can figure out, again, how all of this plays out with our return to hybrid, let's say, full-time.
I think there is language though with a requirement now of at least a minimum of 2 hours for rental, and that's in the policy that we just approved this evening. And that was there beforehand, right? So if somebody signs out the building, they need to commit to having our custodians available for at least 2 hours for cleaning and whatnot. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
And then, groups are responsible for half an hour of setup time prior to the event and a half an hour of cleanup time after the event. The only organization that I'm really most concerned about personally using our buildings is FREC, and that's because I know the amount of support that they give to our, educators in our community and other communities, and They've been longtime users of our facilities, and I think they're extremely responsible, and they're, other educators that understand what it's like to work in a school setting right now and how important it is to keep our buildings clean for our children. I could see them being, good stewards of our facilities and treating, our schools with the utmost respect. I would want to entertain possibly FREC as like a starting organization for, our rental of our facilities. And then seeing how that goes, maybe entertaining other organizations, but just being very mindful of who we have coming into our building.
Has FREC even approached us, or are they doing all virtual?
No, they've
Okay,
been
they're
doing all
doing
virtual.
all virtual.
I'm just gonna tell you flat out, I'm not for this. I just, if we're gonna do virtual group meetings with our kids, and they can't even stay after school in their own building, they can't even go to their own locker room, and then we're gonna bring kids in at night to do that, I'm not for that. And again, I'm sure, Dave, your custodial staff hours, maybe your night guy or woman finishes at 10 or 11, I'm sure you're moving that up, because that person has to probably be on site more so now to help with the day cleaning, because the protocols, when we have, 250 kids in this building, if that's half of it, or 300, there's gonna be lots of cleaning that needs to be done during the physical hours they're here, and then you're really gonna wanna try to get staff out as soon as school gets out, so that they can finish that deep clean and lock the doors and get out of here. But then to have other groups come in at night when our own kids can't even get into their locker rooms, and I'm not for it at this point. You have a lot of money in that revolving account right now.
Roughly 20 grand for building rentals.
What was the one that you just told me had?
Well, we just appropriated it to
FREC.
different projects.
French River, revolving, that has, close to 100,000. So French River and building rentals are two separate funds.
So the athletics revolving is different than building rentals?
Yes, that's a separate one as well.
Okay.
The only thing that just comes to my mind is, again, it has to be approved by the Board of Health. And if the Board of Health is not gonna give it an okay, it's just not gonna happen. And so,
We have asked them to be involved. Have we heard back? I know that you had sent a letter to them because they had
Yes, I spoke with
requested
the agent and he didn't have a problem with it.
Okay.
However, he did recommend that we send a memo to the Board of Health,
Board of Health.
just kind of letting them know what we were thinking. And that has been sent out. I haven't heard from the actual,
that. Chair of the board.
exactly, from the board itself.
and I guess I would wanna know what other communities are doing. So if you speak to, other business administrators throughout, the surrounding communities and see if they're renting their buildings, that would be useful information for this committee to have and to understand how they're going about doing it. I definitely wanna make sure that we're getting revenue for our schools, but like, Mr. Canacchioli said, I wanna make sure that we're also keeping our schools safe for our children and,
What is your biggest revenue stream from what groups? Are they mostly sports? The groups that,
I would say basketball league rentals. We have 2 leagues in town that rent.
so,
However, even with that said, it's my understanding that
They're not
basketball's
even
not
in
meeting
the-
right now.
I don't even
They're
think
not
they
even
can
in
play.
mode yet,
so,
practice.
right, so they're in practice mode. They need to follow the EEA guidelines, whether or not they're even gonna get there. So we may not have a lot of opportunities to even consider renting.
Mr. Canacchioli.
Oh, sorry, September.
Yeah, just one last comment. We always talk about the needs of our students and the well-being of our kids, and I think that, to your point, Dave, you're right about the nights during the week. It will be very difficult to really provide the safe environment that we want for our students the following day. However, on the flip side, if OCC, for example, is not running their program, I think that the kids may need a private league for the socialization, for a little bit of normalcy. And maybe we should consider allowing rentals on weekends, meeting the guidelines approved by the Board of Health, meeting our health and safety guidelines. They're paying for the custodial off of our days, off of our time, and I think that it might be something that we could look at to,
I definitely,
a little
I agree with you on that. I mean, but you can drive around this town right now and you can't even get onto outdoor hoops. They're all locked.
they're open. OCC's been open.
No, the outdoor hoops,
Yes,
they must have just opened, because those have been locked all summer, those, the
Right,
ones
they-
up at the Little League
there
field.
were actually men in there, that's how I know they didn't jump the fence. They were adults that were in there about 2 weeks ago, I saw them.
Wow, 'cause I thought they
Yeah.
were still locked up.
No, they were open.
Okay. Do we wanna table this to the next meeting, or does somebody wanna make a motion to take a vote?
I'd like to make a motion to consider weekend rentals of our facilities to groups with the approval of the Board of Health and being sure that they're meeting our health and safety guidelines.
I would second that.
Any discussion? Call for the vote. September?
Yes?
Pal?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
I'm a no. Let the record show 3-1, one absent, passes. Do you have the specific language, because it's a little different than what you guys
Yeah,
wrote
I
up?
think we're good. We can insert weekend rental. Facility, weekend rental, we can put in.
Yeah, and if I could just follow up, I know the motion passed, but, Justin, when you speak with your custodial staff and as things develop, if you think that there should be an increase in fees or something like that, please pass that on to the policy subcommittee, because I do think that in this time, with extenuating circumstances and the cost of supplies for cleaning, all sorts of,
I think you also have that ability already, because it does say in your policy that the superintendent or his or her designee reserves the right to modify fees
okay.
when in their judgment it warrants it. So you already have really that built in.
So that just might,
Pre-COVID language in there.
I know, and that might be one of
Ahead of
those
the
things that
curve.
comes down the pike, if we're,
Probably should have mentioned this or asked this. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered. But are you just gonna focus on one building? Is this gonna be open to all 4 buildings? Are we gonna try to just streamline it to one so that we don't have potential issues in multiple buildings where we might have to, I mean, has it been a
I can think of
problem?
one group in particular that would be in all buildings at once. Right now, I'm gonna take it on a case-by-case basis. I'm aware of one group that will be pretty primarily weekends only in one building.
During the winter season.
Yes.
So that,
So
again,
it's gonna be a case-by-case basis, and also with the custodial time, again, I kind of view the school committee policy as the minimum amount of time that's required. They will certainly, there'll be more time added to that, again, based on the number of people that are coming in and things like that. So it will be a case-by-case basis. I certainly would wanna crawl with this, if you will, before we start just opening it up to everybody. Part of that, I believe, even with the Board of Health, if they were to approve a plan, they're gonna look, well, how are you doing COVID tracing? And I think it would be really difficult if a group were to rent multiple buildings at once and do tracing at the same time. So again, it'd be case-by-case basis. I wouldn't, certainly if somebody approached us about renting all buildings at all times, we'd have to proceed cautiously with that one.
And you're gonna adjust the contracts that they sign? That, I don't know what the language says, but if they're not following what they're supposed to, we have the right to remove them immediately?
Yes.
I'm assuming that's probably somewhere in there on other things anyway?
No,
Yes.
refund.
All right, next on the agenda, Justin
Okay.
Still, bus monitor bid award.
So we put out to bid, let me back up a little bit more information. So we're looking for a bus monitoring service for our buses. Now, can Durham provide that? Certainly. The issue is, after we checked with our legal counsel, that over $50,000 requires us to go out to bid. Well, bus monitoring service is not part of the original scope of our agreement, simply for transportation. So after we checked with the attorney, beyond that would require us to go out to bid. I was semi-hopeful that being a health and safety issue, And given that we already have a contract with these folks, that we would be able to kind of get by that way, but the attorney advised otherwise. And said that, no, you certainly have to put this out to bid with very little time. So we had the bid opening today. We received 2 bids, one which was filled out incorrectly. Now, we had solicited a per monitor per day cost. And the one group had submitted an hourly cost. Now, with that, I really don't feel comfortable accepting that, as they didn't follow the rules of the bid, if you will. Another bidder could certainly protest that and said, well, they didn't do it properly. You can't accept that. We did also, so that was an hourly rate for one, that was for Precision Human Resources. We received a second bid from Durham School Services, our current transportation provider, for $210 a day. What that translates to is $32 and some change an hour for a bus monitor. The other part of this is this funding is coming from our CARES and ESSER grants. We certainly didn't have this laying around in our budget last year when we put it together and say, geez, let's hire 10 bus monitors. So we did include this as part of our most recent grant application, which has been approved. Currently, we have $217,000 budgeted for those bus monitor positions, and again, that's a contracted service. The reason why we wanted to go with the contracted service was because these are certainly not part-time positions, which means if we were to hire these folks, we'd be on the hook for benefits. So with all that kind of taken into consideration, at this time, I would request that the school committee vote to reject the bids, and we should go out to bid a second time. But what does that mean? That means that for school starting Wednesday and Thursday this week, we wouldn't have bus monitors. Because this was just open today, I haven't really come up with a plan B yet with the superintendent as to how we want to proceed. We do have a few options. I'll kind of just put them out there. Because the contract will be less than $50,000. If we're just doing a few days, we could certainly go through our transportation provider just to cover a few days, and that would still allow us 2 weeks to get the second bid results in and go with whoever wins the bid. Another option would be to simply hire our own people. However, with that said, once we hire them, we own them. As far as unemployment, and that's the difficult thing with this, is it's hard to predict when this will end. In other words, when will we stop needing bus monitors? So with the contracted service, it's much easier for me to say, well, when we terminate the contract. Whereas if we hire these folks, well, geez, we own them, and then the unemployment and everything that kind of goes with having an employee. So it just, again, that's kind of the reasoning why we want to do a contracted service versus a hiring. But hiring's still on the table. I mean, everything's kind of, again, I haven't discussed with the superintendent yet what plan B is, but these are just some of our options. So I guess for purposes of tonight, I would recommend the committee reject the bids that we received and go out a second time and try to set up a contract for something prior to October 5th, before the students come back. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding.
Pal?
Well, so one question that comes to my mind is how many kids are presently now riding on our buses? Because we have to have decreased capacity.
25 students per bus.
Okay.
And I use that loosely. I believe that's for a 77 passenger bus. I think it's 24 for a 71 and 26 for an
Somewhere
84
between
passenger.
23 and 25.
So it's about 25 is your average,
Okay.
excluding siblings. Siblings can sit together.
How many students per seat?
1.
Okay. I know that some districts have taken to having the bus company come for the orientation day and giving the kids, opportunity to load the bus and understand where they'll be sitting in the pattern. I also think that, I'd like to think, I should say, that we have students that, are responsible enough to understand the times, and we have parents that can speak to their kids. And, yes, I want to see us have monitors everywhere, but while we're looking and, rejecting this bid, I think that there could be hopefully enough training between the bus driver and the students, if we do it properly, where they understand the importance of sitting where they sit. And I would think with such a decreased amount of students on the bus, that it should be manageable for the bus driver. And kids should be, in their own seats, and it's not like we have 3 kids to a seat anymore. So I would think that the bus would be, I'd like to say more orderly than ever. So that's just one thought that comes to my mind. Is it something that every district is doing, that they have bus monitors? Is that like a recommendation that's been put out that all, communities need this? Is it a necessity, or is it?
Essie talked about it, and it's in their guidance. They didn't talk about how one would go about doing that.
Yeah.
Certainly, I'm sure they're, one thing, knowing that there would be federal funding, that might be one position. But I think until you understood what your model was going to look like and your percentages of students who might be participating in remote, you could very well have a bus with 5 students on it. We do not
Right.
know yet. I don't think we actually
So do we need a
have
monitor for 5
the numbers on each bus. While we know who should and would be eligible,
Right.
we don't know if they'll show up and be riding that bus until we actually run it. So
So-
certainly on Wednesday and Thursday, we'll get an idea. And we could also see, moving forward, that some other students, as time goes on, will begin to ride the bus.
So for me personally, I'd want to know what our ridership is and
Mhm.
how many monitors are really needed, and if it's really a necessity, because it's a large expense.
Sure.
And we're already putting a lot of money into having other types of monitors. I just feel like this district is monitor heavy, and I kind of think that we could do a little better instead of having all these monitors, but that's my opinion. I think that we have very responsible adults, and I'd like to think that our children, and I'd like to think that the bus drivers that are already responsible for the kids with the cameras on the bus and those types of things that we already have in place would hopefully be enough security,
I think there's a difference between health, safety, and security. And
Right.
I think a bus driver's primary job, as you obviously attest to, is to drive the bus.
Right.
And not pay attention as to whether or not a child has sanitized their hands, getting on and off, or sat in the correct seat. So I think they would probably push back and say to you, as any bus company would, that's not our job to make sure that John is sitting in the back of the bus. That would be my hunch.
Right.
But I may be off on that, I think.
So are there gonna be assigned seats to each child
Yes.
every day?
Yes. The answer is yes to that. Yeah.
And is there a way
And there's a
for,
way to load and unload a bus, yes.
so I know that that's different with different districts, and
Well, that is actually the recommendation from DESI. So
Right.
If the district chooses not to do it, that's their choice, but we're trying to adhere as much as we can to those recommendations. I don't disagree with you, that I think certainly this figure doesn't represent anything near where the bid came. The bid is around $281,000 roughly, if my math was correct today, when I saw that, or you told me that, for 10 people, so that's a lot of money. And so whether or not you need that could be the question. You could look and see how Wednesday and Thursday looks, and then make some type of a judgment, maybe not, a complete judgment on that. So we do have some time, which is one of the reasons why we don't have the funding that we can tell you right now to pay for the $281,000 based on our other staffing needs. We may, but right now we don't.
If I may, so, with all due respect, I find that historically the bus is probably the worst place to expect students to be on their best behavior. And I think that historically, we all know that.
right,
So I think that tonight we're talking about Wednesday and Thursday of this week, when the students are in school, and then we have 2 weeks if we reject this bid.
A minimum of 2 weeks. yes,
Exactly.
right. We
So
hope.
have we thought about and/or looked into, I think the first 2 days, their first day on the bus is probably the most important day, because they do have to be told
Right.
the whys and the hows and all of that. But have we thought about the possibility, if we reject this bid tonight, to have some of our school monitors, who I believe have already been, we can't do that.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh.
We haven't, like I said, I haven't had a conversation with the superintendent yet about
Okay.
what the contingency is gonna be.
But even substitute teachers, we're talking about 2 days here, we're not talking about 2 weeks or whatever. So I do agree that we can probably based on the numbers that we know, once students are on those buses, we may be able to assume all of those things, and I would love to believe that. But the driver has to drive. The driver cannot be worrying about and supervising anyone else. Bus monitors are extremely important anytime. I happen to live in the neighborhood with 3 students to a seat, and our buses are so overcrowded. I think it's important that we have them from the get-go, but I don't think at this rate. We can't, in good conscience, look to spend this kind of money. So I would like to make a motion to reject the bids that we have.
I would second that.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. September?
Yes.
Pal?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
I'm a yes, 4 yeses, 1 absent. Motion to reject those 2 bids passes. You talked a little bit about a contingency plan there, Justin. I do agree 1,000% with September. If we are going to be expecting this for kids when they ride the buses, potentially on October 5th after these 2 days, then we need to start out right. Because if we start out with it's a free-for-all in the first 2 days, then that's gonna be the expectation in October. So this is really a short turnaround. I mean, buses are rolling on Wednesday. They're either, in my opinion, either needs to be a clear message sent to kids and families that these first 2 days, here's the expectation. There will be no monitors on the bus at that point, but our plan for the 5th is to have monitors. Unless you can get the Durham people at short money to come in for those 2 days and monitor buses, it sounds like a decent kind of contingency plan. But yeah, whatever you do with kids to start, you gotta do it right.
We'll see what we can come up with. I think we may be able to come up with a plan. If not, we certainly are gonna let parents know that for those first 2 days, they very well may not see an adult other than the bus driver on the bus. But we might be able to come up with something. We'll see. We just opened the bid today, so.
Corey?
I'd like just add for you to look at while we're in between bids here. Is there an opportunity to use people that we already own, to use your words? We already own them for benefits and whatnot. Instructional assistants at other buildings, if they're at the elementary school, can they increase their hours and do the high school runs, and the middle school runs, and then go to work at the elementary?
Absolutely. That ability is definitely there if people want to pick up some extra hours, either before or after school. Also, with that said, we are looking for crossing guards as well.
Yeah.
Figured I'd just kind of plug that position.
Yep.
So we were talking about that today, potentially, are there some additional support staff that may want to add some additional hours prior to, and there might be some who are available, so that's,
Yep.
and may want to pick that up.
I mean,
No,
that's the
no.
ideal. They know our students, so.
Exactly.
And potentially, is there any way to leverage maybe some of our seniors? No better role models than the seniors for at least the younger populations. I don't know, but.
Community service.
Germs out.
Question about what I heard too. Kids are gonna be assigned a bus number and a seat number? Did I hear that correctly? Because I
There'll
don't
be
see that on the website. I see sites.
Correct. So we just released the bus stops today.
Yeah.
I have quite a few changes to get through the next day or so, probably for the next couple of weeks. The assigned seats, it's pretty, I don't want to say it's pretty easy, it's a little difficult. So the first person to board the bus would be to sit all the way in the back and to kind of load from the back forward. However, that assigned seat's not the same seat in the morning and the afternoon because it's going to be kind of the inverse when they are getting dropped off in the afternoon. So the first person to get dropped off is going to sit in the front seat, and the last person to get dropped off will sit in the back seat. So the way that they'll board, the idea is nobody's passing each other in the hall, and in the aisle. So while there'll be assigned seats, it's not going to be the same seat in the morning and the afternoon, depending on how the route is and when the child's getting off the bus, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense for the morning, I think, but are the seats gonna be marked? Are they gonna be like X's on ones they can't sit in, like all that stuff? I mean, I just feel like that's a lot for
It's
kids
a lot
to
for a student to
consume with
remember.
no support now on the bus
Correct.
to do that.
No, we'll have the support.
Is it a zigzag pattern so that they were going to?
Additionally, a
This year,
zigzag
no one-
pattern,
no one-
but that's to keep, if there's two seats
Right.
right across from each other.
Mhm.
One student would sit kind of towards the window, the other one would kind of, it's to keep the maximum
So will the
distance.
bus company put an X? Is
They
that
have
what
put X's on the seats themselves, but that doesn't mean it's every other seat, just on the seat where the child should be sitting on the side or
Okay.
on
So-
either side of the seat, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So they have marked those off, and we have, they do have the sanitizer dispensers. The one thing that we are lacking, like we talked about tonight, is just the monitors. There's somebody to kind of enforce,
So
make sure
the-
everyone's wearing their mask and sanitizing their hands, sitting where they're supposed to sit, not horsing around.
Okay.
So, going back to kind of one comment I made before, will there be an orientation where our students have some, I mean, they're gonna ride the bus here, I guess, to get to their orientation, but it would have been nice to have our kids come to the school first, be dropped off, and get a training on how to get on and get off the bus. With the adult supervision of our administration and others that understand how the process works, in addition to the bus company, but I don't know, that, I guess it's too late, maybe.
We could certainly schedule something like that. However, it's not gonna be on day one. It'd probably be within the first couple weeks of school, I would say, because we do bus evacuations and bus safety. It could be something like that, but again, it wouldn't be on the first day. It might be a couple weeks.
But then the
in.
kids are already riding into school.
I understand. That's
It's like
the
a little bit
difference.
after the, you know.
I think one of the goals would be if you had your monitors in place, they would go over that as students on the first day load
Right.
and explain to that student and parent who's at the bus stop, now this is gonna be a little different this year, that would be the hope.
Right.
They would have had that training. They certainly are aware, in this case, our bus company has received all of that information from DESE, so to go over it with those individuals if we were to hire through them. And there's no reason why, if we do decide to, as a contingency, to use them for 2 days, that they wouldn't have already had that conversation with these individuals. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. It's just really making kids understand and making students understand that there's a difference between this year and last year. There's a way that we're gonna load, and there are certain things and processes and procedures, make them feel comfortable about getting on a bus. So it's
Right,
not scary for
right,
them.
but I think to Pal's point, we don't have that, and kids are gonna be loading buses Wednesday, so.
And not knowing maybe that they sit in a zigzag position, not, you know, parents might not know that there's only 25 kids. You know, we would hope that they would know these things with all the notices and all the information, but I'll be
Well,
quite
we're gonna-
honest, I think there's an immense fatigue on parents with the amount of information they've gotten. They've been inundated, but at the same time, you know, they might have pushed this stuff to the back burner, like, I don't have to worry about it yet, it's not here yet, but now it's here. And I think, like, hopefully there would be something that would come from us as a school department to families that say, to prep your kid for the first day of getting on the bus, this is what they should expect to see. They're not gonna sit in seats necessarily with anybody else. I don't know about siblings though, because I've heard.
We did send that out in
Right.
the reentry plan, but I do believe, as you have indicated, two things. One, if we do not and cannot come up with a plan, then we need to clearly say to parents,
Right.
this is what's gonna happen on these days, this is what we're going to expect. We wanna just give you this as a big picture so that you understand, because we don't expect we're gonna be able to have a monitor to explain this to your child, so we're giving you that. We can get that out to all of our parents. And if we're able to, then hopefully the monitor, even temporary, even if we give them this information, which they already have, but we can make what I call the cheat sheet, if you
Right.
will, for the monitor to have to make sure
Little
they've done that.
checklist,
Yeah,
yeah.
checklist of.
So that's, I think if you send something to parents and
Yeah.
just talk about, you know, we don't have the monitors in place, but here's a checklist of expectations for your child on the bus, and just give them
Here's what
some
it's
quick
gonna look
bullets.
like.
Here's what it's
Yeah.
gonna look like. The kids are here all day long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Nugent, are the kids and all the principals here, do you have them for a full day?
Yes.
So at some point, if there's like a class meeting or, you know, any sort of meeting, you can embed 10 minutes on bus protocols? Because we can't wait 2 weeks into school, Justin, until, you
No, I
know,
understand.
Yeah.
it just,
Yeah.
you know, something that you guys can go over with them as part of a, you know, welcome into. I'm sure you're gonna talk a little bit about, you know, remote learning the next couple of weeks you're at home, and then once you come in hybrid, here's what things are gonna look. It seems like it'd probably be a lot of meetings that day.
Yeah.
to maybe just embed some of that bus
Yeah.
talk in there?
And we can do it
that- or
doubly, we
checklist?
can, if we can't get monitors, and then we can send something home to parents, we can also ask principals to just take that checklist also and kind of go over it to make sure that kids are comfortable.
September?
I just wanna say that I am definitely not okay with not having monitors the first 2 days. I think, as we've pointed out, that is the most important thing, and if we need to amend a motion and ask Durham to give us 2 days with their monitors at these outrageous prices, that is number one important. Parents are so nervous about putting their kids on the bus anyway, and to get an email the day before school starts saying, oh, and by the way, we don't have any monitors, like, let us worry about that. We need some bodies on that bus. We need the kids told as they're boarding the bus. You sit all the way in the back. Every day you get, so that someone is directing this. We can't expect them to have this whatever on day one. And 2 weeks later, when they come back to school, expect them to remember and follow that, and or have a monitor that they didn't have the first time. I don't mean the person, I just mean the position. So if I need to amend that motion, then I would like to do that, to include, we'll take Durham's at that outrageous rate for the 2 days if they'll do that for us. I think it's very important.
The way that I have the contract put together, I mean, we could, I think I gotta give them maybe 10 days notice to terminate the agreement.
Well, we're not in school for those 10 days, so go for
Correct,
it.
so that would, if that's what the committee desires, I mean,
I
we
don't know,
certainly could pay for those, just those 2 days until we,
I just feel like we don't have a choice. We can't expect the parents, to be okay with that, being told last minute, number 2, big problem, and then expect students of, again, maybe not high school kids, and maybe not even middle school kids, but we're talking about little ones getting on a bus. The whole experience needs to be, because this is how we expect it to be when you get back on this bus again. So I think we really owe it to the kids and the parents to make this work somehow by Wednesday.
I don't disagree with you, September. I agree with you, like I said earlier, 1000%. I just don't know how, I'm thinking from my principal hat, I just don't know how you make it work with the staff hired from Durham, getting them all on the same page, getting them the buses they need to be at, and all done in 2 days. In a perfect world, I wish we could. I just don't, my opinion is I don't think we can, but I think if we send a clear message to parents that we don't have the monitors that we anticipated, and I think people would understand that. Here's the expectation on the bus, and maybe they'll opt for those couple of days to just drive their kid, or those, it's only 1 day, right? 1 run.
Right.
Maybe they would opt to drive their child in that day, and then we have to have something in place for the 5th, you know what I mean? I would love to see it Wednesday, I just don't know if it's possible. I just don't know. Yes?
To your point, Mrs. Forbes, about having folks, I personally always want people that our students know. And I'd rather have people that our students know versus Durham, who knows who they are. And it would be a lot to ask of our staff and our faculty and whatnot, but, if anybody wants to step up, and then maybe there's some money set aside for those people that volunteer their time for this, first few days, that's a thought that comes to mind. I mean,
Listen,
you're
I
talking
can
10 people. We have a big district.
I agree.
I would hope that there would be 10 people that would be interested. And I would like to try to see if we could just fill it that way temporarily if it's a necessity. And then I would feel much more comfortable. These people already hopefully know the students, some of the students anyways, that they'd be, on their bus. Because they would be hopefully in the school, but the kids would be loading, or boarding or exiting the bus from. So
Listen, and I will publicly volunteer now. We need 9. We'll figure it
you're
out.
very kind.
I think it's really needed, and if it means I'm the one on the bus making sure they're doing it, if that's okay with everyone who needs to be okay with it. And I think that you're right, Mrs. Griffin, I think we can find people who are already quarried through the school, work for us or not, and, volunteer unless that's against contracts, then we have to worry about that, but I think we need to find a way.
Well, we did not accept either bid, right?
Right.
correct.
So we don't have to put another bid out yet if we go this route,
Just have to,
through
This is
vol-
just the 2-day route.
through volunteers. You're
No,
looking for
Just for 2
volunteers.
days, though. This is just, I'm sorry?
You're not
Oh.
gonna do it.
I don't know, at $32 an hour, I might.
I think right now I would do both. I'd put it out to bid and also.
You've got to post it for 2 weeks.
And also,
But if you put it out to bid and then hire these people temporarily, is that a conflict of the bid?
no,
No,
no, not at all.
no, it's temporary.
No, I would do both and just see what probably is the best method and, maybe 2 weeks come back and say, well, geez, either the existing employees didn't work out or conversely, the existing employees are working out great and, let's not go with the contract. I wouldn't, let me just.
Well, no, what I think September's talking about is just a
Get
2-day
volunteers.
fix.
I'm talking about Wednesday and Thursday, and then
It's
we have
getting
some
her
time
and
to
9
figure it
other
out.
Yeah.
PTO potential, maybe the PTOs have some people, 1 or 2 in each PTO.
Right.
So I'm gonna have to
Might wanna
reach
do
out
it.
tomorrow.
So she's
and
talking
see.
about just doing it on a 2-day,
I think for the,
that's it. And
Okay.
then
that
October
was what
5th,
right,
it's up to you guys to
to
find
figure it out.
the people you're looking for.
Unless you hear of people that internally want the positions, I mean, that would,
Well, that would be
Gives us
if
a
we
little
posted
time.
it internally or came up with, what we expect the hours to be, if you will. Because you remember, you're doing double runs, so it's not gonna be a job that an internal person is gonna do to be able to do the runs. That's your problem. No one is gonna be able to do it because you've got multiple runs, your high school. Your 2 elementaries are together, and when you look at the number of hours, really,
right.
I don't think it's gonna be doable for someone who works for us full-time to be able to do those hours. It really,
So just from experience, what happened with us is our instructional assistants, we had enough, we found the 10 who work in my building, which is the last building to arrive for the day. They do high school runs, they do middle school runs, they get paid those extra hours. They do our run and they're arriving at school at the same time as the students.
Exactly.
And so it actually worked out
Yeah.
perfectly that way. To hire internal people, we already own their benefits.
Right.
We're just extending their hours. They appreciated it because they got more hours. A lot of them aren't paid very well, so.
yeah.
I don't know if you've asked, and I don't know what the principals think about, as far as I don't know if we call them instructional assistants in Oxford, is that what we call them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's many left. I think you
All
might
of
have
them
to,
are primarily sped, so
Yeah.
they're all assigned to students.
so you might have to leverage, you
Yeah.
could leverage the
Yeah.
lunch
So
program.
the biggest challenge you have is, you're running three tiers, and just to make sure that they're back in time. So you run the high school, middle school, as 2 separate tiers, and then your 2 elementaries, you're more apt to probably find. But, yeah, it's an option that we can certainly
Something to
explore.
look at, sure.
Yeah, to see.
Yeah.
Once we see and know the exact hours that someone's on the bus. Each run is about 45 to 50 minutes for the
Right.
turnaround. So if you're doing, 2 runs, that's 2 hours in essence in the morning, and 2 hours, if you will, in the afternoon, I would assume.
All right, so how do we proceed forward with your idea? Is that something that we need to approve?
No, because you've rejected this,
No.
so we're gonna have to come up with a plan for the beginning of the week, these 2 days, and then we'll go back out to bid to see. But in the meantime, we'll explore whether or not there's what I'm gonna call an in-house alternative to that, I think. One of the concerns we have, as Justin pointed out, is, we looked at the potential of us hiring our own people, but then we know that these are 1-year positions, we hope, and we would have the unemployment, but we also would have the supervision when someone is out, and that has never worked well. So we saw that firsthand, I think, with doing our own sped transportation and what that entailed. So I can't imagine that the Director of Finance and Operations is gonna have time to oversee and riding a bus himself when you can't get a sub. So that's one of the reasons why we kind
Don't
of.
want to do that, Justin.
Call me.
Just kidding. I had a business manager who had to drive the vans because we did our own internal, and that didn't work out well.
But I think you get 2 different entities there. You got Wednesday and Thursday,
Yeah.
which Wednesday is what, less than,
48
48 hours away.
Yeah.
less than-
Tell me
Yeah.
about
You have
we have
that and
short-term and
Thursday.
long-term.
So that one, right, and to me, if we could maybe leverage, maybe our cafeteria staff, or maybe we can leverage some of those amazing student council reps who have been putting out videos like it's going out of style, and they're amazing.
Yeah,
Maybe those students, you could get 10 of them on buses for hours, here's what you're gonna teach kids with as they come onto the buses. Maybe that's the route to go. Sure, you'll be able to find 10 volunteers
Yeah.
pretty easily, and I don't, because those are the 2 days you gotta worry about right now. And then you got 2 weeks, maybe longer,
Right,
Right.
to go from there.
right.
Okay.
Okay,
We need
all
to
right.
set
All right, let's move forward. Superintendent
Thanks,
of
Justin.
schools, thank you,
Thank you,
Justin.
Justin.
Report to the school committee, update on fall reopening, principals and assistant
Yes.
superintendent.
Thank you. Just a quick intro. Principals are here this evening to give you an update on kind of the fall reopening plans and all that's been going on. I have one principal who I believe is remote because she is home ill, but Mike Lavelle may be taking that on. I'm not sure whether or not, okay. The Director of Finance and Operations and I toured all of the buildings this morning, spent actually most of the day in all of the buildings to see what our readiness was with all of these plans. Took lots of pictures, but I'm gonna just turn it over to whoever is going to start. I think it looks like we have a tag team. To give you some update on some of the staffing changes and the impact on class size and our health and safety features that we have put in place.
Spreadsheet for some stuff, just so you can take a look. Some of the things that
God bless you. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
You can have,
Okay.
Well, we took COVID to make classes.
so good evening. I'll start with Chafee if it's okay.
Yep.
I'm assuming, the first thing that sticks out in this quick and dirty spreadsheet is that it's an extremely small class sizes this year at AM Chafee Elementary School. When I first entered the Oxford Public Schools, we had over 320 kids at Chafee. We're down now to 168 in K&1 and 40 preschoolers. So obviously that's a big change. So Dr. Nash asked us to prepare numbers, so we just, gridded out how many numbers we would have in remote students. It's written there. You can see the teachers' names, and, they're the full remote classes, 1 in K, 1 in 1. So we have 13 in each remote class. Cohort A is posting up with very small numbers in kindergarten each class. Cohort B, very small numbers. And the same is true in grades 1. The largest class would be, and it's deceiving because a couple things. There's a little bit of deception there because some of the students that are in Cohort B will be spending a lot of time in our ILC classroom, as well as some of the kids who are in both cohorts A and B. Those are children of students whose parents work in the district. Okay. And then, so you can see there the average class sizes, and then she asked us also to start preparing, just some of the room changes that have been made. So because of our small sizes, and as Chafee is shrinking and Barton is growing, 2 of John's teachers are going to come down and teach remotely from AM Chafee School. So they can use 2 of our classrooms, B9 and B6, which were just being used as some storage because we moved a lot of the tables out and brought our desks back into play. We do have our COVID support room. All 4 schools now have a COVID support room. So right next to a nurse's office, formerly my school adjustment counselor's office. So that worked out. Unless you're the school adjustment counselor. Professional development, she asked us to kind of overview, that was in your handout. It's pretty extensive. We did some real deep work the last 2 weeks. A lot of, and we can go into detail about a lot of that. Quite a bit of it was spent the last few days just keying in on that last bit of technology that really needed to be honed up. We had Katie Phillips is just an amazing individual who basically kept us afloat and kept a lot of teachers from losing their sanity. And I think we are truly ready. I think we're certainly ready for Wednesday and Thursday, especially with these small numbers. I know you guys are worried, and I heard your points. We have 46 first graders that'll be coming into Chafee on Wednesday, and 46 on Thursday. So I mean, just to bear with some of the numbers, divide those. I mean, many of them are going to be driven anyway. So our buses should have a very small number. I just want you to know that, because especially those first 2 days, we do not have K entering the building. And as you look through, I'll explain a little while further what our K team. You know how we always like to do things differently in kindergarten. So, other health and safety. She just wanted us to all cover health and safety. So I think all 4 buildings. You saw them when you walked in. You saw the stickers. You see the hand sanitizers. You see, you know, the constant hand washing that's gonna be going on. We've onboarded 3 of our 4 health and safety monitors. Today was our first introductory to them. Mr. Lavelle will talk a little bit probably about his overview with them. He sent them over to us just to touch base with us so we could do a quick training. All 4 of mine, I've got a 4th that's coming in soon. All 4 of mine are former lunch staff, so they've just transitioned into the health and safety position. I was very lucky. So they all know the kids, they know the building, they know the layout, and we just went over what expectations were. I'll go into a little bit of how the orientations are gonna work, but before I do that, I'd really like to talk about how excited I am. My amazing school adjustment counselor, Linda Forty, she retired at the end of this last school year. So she went on to bigger and better things. She picked the right year. And so we've hired Brooke Bodette. She's replacing Mrs. Forty as my school adjustment counselor. I'm also pleased to announce that Heather Zimbowski is replacing Catherine Herrick as my preschool teacher. Catherine went on to bigger and better things as well at Clara Barton School in 4th grade. I guess it's really good to jump in the kindergarten orientation. It's all written there, and I got the real cool color one, but we're on a budget, so I didn't want to spend too much color coding it. But you'll see the kindergarten, they laid out all their orientation plans. I won't bore you with all the slides. But I'd like to just kind of quickly I stole one of the teachers' what their overview is. We're going to do the kindergarten orientation. We love parades at Chafee, so we're going to have the kids drive through tomorrow, a Wednesday, between 9:30 and 10:15 to pick up to actually see their teachers for the first time. Again, 67. If it was a typical year, we could never do this and make it work. 67 minus the 13, so we only have a small number of kids that will be driving through. That is when the children will be dropping off. We ask children to do the supply runs, and we changed it a lot this year because you can't get half the things that we used to ask for. So they'll drop off the supplies, and then they'll receive their orientation packet, and it's put together by the kindergarten teachers. Then they will go back and they will go through this with their teachers during the virtual orientation later on between 11 and 11:45 with each individual teacher. Now, I can't speak to the other schools, but every one of my teachers has by now reached out to their parents. They're becoming, it's not like years past where you might wait until know your school night to actually discuss something with your teacher. I think of all the things that have come from this craziness is that should be the new norm. I think by the time school year starts, parents and teachers have already communicated quite a bit. We know more about our kids this year, I think, than we ever have. So, and it goes beyond just your usual, asthma and peanuts. It's the deep stuff. So that's I guess one of the benefits. So then that will go through. It's right. It's all right there. But the most important thing, the reason we change things up and screw things up every year is we need to do that kindergarten screening. Even though it's not going to dictate what classrooms they go to, we still use the Brigance, and we really want to take some time to make sure that we have something to gauge our students on, because that's the first form of assessment that we use. And obviously assessing is going to be even more involved this year because we've got some stuff to talk about. So then I just gave you a quick sample of one of the kindergarten's teachers' things. They've been emailing ridiculously. I'm getting a lot of emails. It's been a really constant back and forth with the parents, families. Then I just threw one. I wanted you to also see, like, the grade 1 is just doing the same thing that our 1 through 12 are doing. So they're excited about the first day because that's the day that they actually will spend time with just those 11 or 12 kids, and they won't have to necessarily be concerned with their tech piece yet, and because let's be honest, that's scary. And so they'll actually have and look at my numbers, cohort A, you're looking at 12, 11, 11, 11 kids. So that'll be the dream day. After that, those 2 days are going to be exciting. And then, but I wanted you to also see what it's like to be Mrs. K. Davis, who is she's my remote teacher for grade 1. So she just how she's doing her things. It's listed there. It's just, they've all been working so hard, putting together so many packets. And I think the UPS drivers and the mail truck drivers at Chafee are getting a little sick of us, but they're coming constantly. We've got more stuff going home in the next couple weeks. Again, the Chromebooks, as long as people filled out the survey, they should all be up and running and ready to go. And so we're really excited about that. Let me see. Friday morning process. I think that's, I mean, if you have, individual questions about any of the professional development, I can go into that. We're exhausted. I'm sure you're all exhausted. I'm sure the parents are exhausted. And we're probably over communicating, I agree. But I think it's at this point that there's so much nerve and tension. And John and I both did a Friday night and a Saturday morning, newbie only, come and see the school type of thing, so they could walk the building and just, we had them all go in and pick their dates and times, so that they could be socially distant. We could see their room, because that's really important. I mean, you're talking about 5-year-olds, so, and it can't just open the door of the bus and say, all right, I'll see you in 5.5 hours. So just trying. And normally by this time we've had 3 or 4 visits where they've entered the school, they've had ice cream, they're sick of my jokes, but we're not there yet, so we're trying. But
Any questions from the board? Just 2 quick ones. Mr. P, when you started, wasn't it K1 too when you started?
no, I only had pre-K, K, and 1, right? I thought when I got hired, I was hired K1, 2. Before I got on board, they
It
switched
already
it to
swapped?
pre-K, K1. Yep.
So that's 67. Do we attribute that to potential parents not wanting to send their kids to school right off the bat like this?
We do have several, for this, because of the COVID,
Yeah,
we think there's about 10 to 12
right.
that are holding their kids out.
yeah.
But Nick did a great job. He's on top of his game. He could tell you right now, we were looking at low numbers anyway. The most we could
Yeah.
propose were about 80 this year.
Yeah.
So then we lost and we did lose some to homeschool. We lost some who just said, hey, my kid's just going to wait it out a year,
Oh.
maybe jump. And
We expect a big jump next year,
Yeah.
back to more than normal number,
And
plus
that-
those who
yeah.
held back.
yeah, so
In
yes.
the 12 and the 13s and the cohorts, particularly that one classroom, how spaced are the
6
desks?
feet.
So you're able to
Yeah,
get 6 feet.
and that's with the wall space. A lot of the stuff is out of their rooms, so my rooms are kind of empty. They still look homey, but they're very empty. So teachers, kindergarten, first grade teachers have a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So I would assume some of those smaller classrooms you could probably get
We
8
could.
feet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
We have 10 desks in my kindergarten rooms, and we have those are with 3 extras.
Okay.
So, anticipating what can change. But.
All right, thank you. Mr. Quinn?
Thank you. Really quick, I will just run through each grade level as far as how many of each students we have. So for example, in grade 2, we have 118 students. 83 will be hybrid learners. 33 are full remote learners. And we have 2 that have chosen to do homeschool. In grade 3, we have 102 students. 73 have chosen hybrid, 28 have chosen full remote, and we have 1 homeschool student. And in grade 4, we have 146 students. 110 are going hybrid, 35 are full remote, and 1 homeschool. So because of the numbers, we have 2 full remote classes at each grade level. 2 in second, 2 in third, 2 in fourth. Thought we were all set with staff, but last Thursday I was informed the person we wanted to be our second third grade full remote teacher did not accept the position. So today we interviewed a couple of more people and hopefully we'll have that filled. But I need to shout out to our current third grade full remote teacher who is going to take on the responsibility of just getting all 28 full remote kids up and running. And then I hope to have that filled, certainly within that first week of full remote teaching. So, and 28 isn't a horrible number. And in grade, which actually brought our hybrid classes down. So now since we have 2 full remotes, each grade level went down a hybrid section. So we have 4 hybrid classes at second grade, 4 at third grade, and 5 at fourth grade right now.
What are the breakdowns, John? Like average?
Oh, the average class size is sure. In second grade, it's 21 of the average class size for a hybrid class. Grade 3 is 19, and grade 4 is 22. So grade 2 and 3 have 4 classroom teachers. Grade 4 has the 5th. and the hybrids are about 10, 11, 9, 10 in that area. Nothing over like 13. I think we had a 12 and 11, but that was about it. So, as far as what we did to the school, I know what Mr. P said, you know, and I got to say, our new second grade remote teacher, Mrs. Audrey Chesmore, has been thrilled with accepting the job, but also, you know, we're going to make this right, even though she's teaching from Chafee. You know, she's over there today setting her space up, and we are going to, you know, they'll do some things together, but it is a little easier if you're a remote teacher. You don't necessarily have to be in the same school. We'd like it, but I want to thank Mr. P for freeing up those 2 rooms. A few alterations at Barton. What we did was we took, we have 2 computer labs, one in the library and one next door. That second computer lab, we pushed everything back. That is a special education room now for 1 grade level, grade 2, so there's more space for that teacher to space out and service students. There's a pretty big classroom down in the end, C12, which is one of our classrooms, and both of our 4th grade remote teachers will be using the same room. They basically split their room in half. There's whiteboards on each end, and we've put sort of these big cabinets and partitions down the middle, so they seem to be comfortable doing that. So both of our 4th grade teachers will be teaching remotely from the same space. We've practiced, and it seems to be working out so far. We moved our guidance counselor out for our medical waiting room. Basically, I took the hit on that. Mr. Quinn is going full remote this year himself. I've ordered myself a cart. Dr. Nash doesn't necessarily agree with it, but I'm going to do it.
That's where he's housed right now.
What's that?
Where you're housed right now.
Yes, I'm in that room down the D wing that goes out to nowhere. It's really a room with a door in it. So I'm going to be more remote. So we've shifted everybody around. So Mrs. Thornton has an office. Mrs. Hutchinson has an office. I'm going to be on the cart for a while. I think I can do it. And we have moved some things around. We're going to make our conference room hopefully an area for the staff to spread out and eat, because the teacher lunchroom right now isn't huge, but they've been eating outside in the courtyard and the picnic tables, but obviously when it gets cold we'll have to figure that out. So that's kind of still a work in progress. The storage unit is pretty full back there. The custodians have been working, you never know how much furniture you have until you store it. So all the furniture, that extra furniture is in there. Other health and safety changes, just so you know, our medical waiting room is all set and in place. Sanitizers, the automatic ones, have been installed throughout the entire school. We just have to add a couple more at the entrances. We have one, probably should need a second one at the entrances. Our health and safety monitors were all in today. They were trained at the middle school first, and then they came down to Barton, and Mrs. Hutchinson and I went over the lunch schedule, their expectations, what we're going to do on the first day as far as training the kids and getting them ready. Mrs. Schomer, our great nurse, has presented all of the COVID protocols to the staff in several of the meetings over the last couple of weeks. Kudos to our cafeteria staff. They were doing sort of dry runs today, pushing the warmers down the hallway, figuring out their schedule and lunches. We have our signage and our dots and our feet on the floor, and Mr. P and I, we haven't put them down yet because we just want to tweak it. Like, we're going to have little dots and probably X's on tape before we put these big feet stickers on the floor, because once they're down there, it's going to be hard to get them up. So we're trying to just fine tune logistics. To do that, I told you about our new hires. Miss Audrey Chesmore is new she's one of our remote teachers. Mrs. Lisa Solanich, she was hired. She was a former Title I teacher assistant. She's now going to be a 4th grade teacher. And we have all of our custodians in place. We've been doing a lot to try and stay on top of everything. This past last Thursday, we had a Google meet and greet, if you will, a question and answer for all Barton families. We had about 80 families join online. We had asked them to send their questions in to us beforehand, so we were better prepared to answer them and kind of flow through them pretty quickly. I got a lot of positive feedback from that, and it's just the things that that we think are important, but again, for that parent that's never dropped off at Barton before, that's what they're concerned about. You know, what time is lunch? What time are those things? So, and that led into nicely to what Rob and I did Friday night and Saturday. All the second grade families, not all of them, but a good amount, signed up for times. We let them in 3 families at a time throughout the building. They walked around and we took their questions on the way out. Mrs. Schomer was there, Mrs. Hutchinson was there, so we got some good time to just to give people the time, because as I said, I can say it to you once, but it's almost like I need to tell you the schedule like 5 or 6 times before it sinks in. So today was a great day. We had a lot of parents come by the school between 9 and 5 to pick up materials. I saw Mr. Burke there this afternoon, and then someone came in right behind you that works with you with the same mask on from your school. So it was I said, there's two masks the same right in a row was freaky. We've sent out numerous one calls. I want to thank Mrs. Hutchinson. She has made a pretty foolproof calendar that we sent out. This basically tells you what your kids are doing on what day. So if you look at this calendar, you know what you should be doing. And that is the confusing part for a lot of people. So and I know Mr. P has one, so we're going to send that right out to parents there. And we're going to do some follow-up on the orientation days, whether that's a Google Meet or not. And we're meeting one last time tomorrow as a staff in the morning, fine-tune the orientation days. So we've been working hard, and I'll take any questions. I know that was a lot, but
No, it sounds great to me. Are we all set for remote? Heard a lot about hybrid, but I haven't heard anything about the 2 weeks of full remote. How are we? Are we in good shape? I know a lot of that PD was around that.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, we definitely got, we invested with the MTSS, you guys remember that from last year, and we really hooked in with this group of people that, and I can't say enough about this one woman in particular, Tara Trainer, who's been coming into the district now regularly. She's probably never going to drive to Oxford again once we're done with her, but she has been a lifesaver, and both John and I and the middle school have been taking advantage of her expertise, and it's almost like she's been through this before. It's one of those weird people who just knows, can handle it. So, but that's all we've been doing is preparing for the remote, because the 2 days is a practice run. That we're going to after action review that on the Friday the 18th. We'll figure out, fine tune, but realistically, that's where the rubber's going to meet the road, because those kids, both in hybrid or in remote, need to be taught both in school and at home.
yeah, and I think too, certainly anybody who is going full remote needs all their materials before school starts on Wednesday, and we're about, I'd say, 88% there. There's still some things in there, but we'll get that out to the families tomorrow. Katie dropped by all of the Chromebooks Friday afternoon for our hybrid students. The remote ones came in earlier, so we think everybody has a device. Obviously,
As long as they filled out that survey.
there'll be, tweaks in that, but, obviously it's just once you get up and running, you hope everything is working and going from there. But if you walk through the school and you see the way the teachers have set up their rooms with the cameras and the computers, it's like a little movie set kind of thing, and they have been really working hard fine-tuning it. So I think it's just time to do it.
Yep.
And then I know this week we're not really doing a lot of remote, but once we start, the 21st, I think that's at least that, and then when we get into some synchronous teaching on October. So, but I think we need to turn the switches on and get going.
We're as ready as we can be, and I think we're ready.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike, are you coming up, Mike, or is Amy voicing it, or is she just looking at us from the computer?
God bless you.
We can hear you.
Yeah. So a lot of the same things that our my colleagues have just said. I feel that we're as ready as we possibly can be. I definitely think that we have all the right things in place. So just to start off with our numbers, remote students by numbers by grade. So out of 126 students in grade 7, 28 are remote students. Out of 121 in 6th grade, 31 are remote, and 135 in 5th, we have 45 are remote. That sort of translates into the numbers of remote teachers that we have. In grades 5 and 6, we have two teachers, so a teacher team. One teacher will be teaching ELA and social studies. The other one will be teaching science and math. That's both in 5th and 6th grade. In 7th grade, we have 4 remote teachers, 1 for each content area. They're picking up the remote classes as part of their daily schedule, and the other 4 teachers are teaching specials as a class. Average sizes for our hybrid classes, 5th and 6th both have 10 and 11, between 10 and 11 students. 7th grade has between 7 and 8 per cohort. The things that we've done to our rooms, oh my goodness. We spaced out the rooms appropriately so they're 6 feet apart. All the desks are 6 feet apart. We removed any extra unneeded furniture to facilitate any of that. That was a Herculean effort done by all of our custodial staff. If you can imagine the kind of concept of our building, all of that stuff is going towards the shop. So from one area, down one of our elevators, all the way across it was pretty good. It was a very, very difficult for them to pull off, but we did it. All the classrooms are 6 feet apart. We did split grade 7 into 2 different teams. So now 4 of the teams are on the traditional 8th grade side, so they were all on one hallway for transitional purposes. We've marked all the hallways and stairwells with social distancing spacers and the arrows for traffic flow. All specials will travel to the students, with the exception of gym, to limit the transitions. The health and safety monitors will be posted near all of our bathrooms to ensure one student's entrance at a time to the bathroom. As far as the building and modifications, changes like that, I did meet with Mr. Panagni from the DPW. He talked to me about everything in our building. HVAC has been serviced and tested to ensure the fresh air in the building. The HEPA filters are replaced 4 times per year. Energy recovery ventilators on the roof have been fully serviced this summer, week of June 22nd, and they're all managed via digital building management system. Our PD days since since August 31st until now have been fantastic. Like both, Rob and Bob have mentioned, Tara Trainer, Katie Novak, they've been trained in UDL, hybrid learning, lesson planning, and remote lesson planning, both with those two women. Very, very dynamic when they come in and they talk to our staff. Teachers also had the health and safety training by Amy Gurnett. We had Google Suite training. They did a lot of that on their own, kind of self-paced, because a lot of folks are at different levels at that point. And teachers did have time to facilitate tech and planning to switch from remote and later to the hybrid model. So not only just getting that information in and getting it from Tara and Katie, but also giving them the time in their buildings to actually do it. The amount of things that we've been able to troubleshoot, I can attest to all my faculty and my staff, the strength that they have together to work together and to try to solve problems together has been going on since August 31st. It's really, really interesting to see, like Mr. Quinn had said, it's like a mini studio in there. They got cameras over here and the sound is echoing back and forth. We're trying to figure and troubleshoot those things out. Cadian's on, speed dial, and we're trying to just troubleshoot that way. A lot of things have been worked out. Other changes, we've arranged the schedule so that there are very limited transitions during the day. So students will stay in their classrooms for specials with the exception of gym, and the teachers will come to them to help eliminate those transitions. We've also tried to make sure that everybody knows during presentations throughout the beginning, building management-wise, they're really kind of doing this on a simultaneous basis. So some of them have the doors that connect, and they can go throughout the hallway and kind of if you can imagine it, they're transitioning in one swoop, so to speak. 5th and 6th grade will only transition twice, and the 4 classes up in 7th grade will transition 4 times. So we really limited the amount of transitions. We've designated different arrival and dismissal routes so that they're in 2 separate areas. So the parent drop-off, walkers and bikers will be coming in the 6th grade entrance, where our bus students will be coming in the main entrance, and they'll be exiting the same way. Sitting and staging areas are clearly marked, social distancing dots in the hallways and stairwells. We have health and safety monitors to help with the transitions and lunch. Each classroom has touchless hand sanitizers and dispensers. We're also putting them up in our entrance ways as well. Those are the only 2 that still have to be done. Like I said, the arrival and dismissal routes have been altered, and the parent drop-off and students are usually two separate entrances. Hires, we're still in the process of that. New hires and positions.
I'll jump in on that. So Mrs. Premier has moved to Title I Math, so she's going to be our Title I Math teacher. So we had to replace her, so Mrs. Maureen Kane is taking over as grade 6 math and science. We're still looking for a sub for 7th grade math, so we're working on that. Ms. Premier might jump in and help us with that to get the kids going, and then we'll still find somebody. And we're still looking for a Title I reading teacher. By collapsing the cohorts have been a moving target. We've had a lot of parents switching and going back and forth at the last minute. We had hired a remote teacher for grade 6, and she took the job on Friday, sent me an email declining the job on Sunday. So I was able to finagle and collapse a grade 6 team to do exactly what we were doing in grade 5. So hopefully that will work out well with those two. Other than that, I think we're pretty good with staffing at this point. I was a little panic-stricken last week, but this week I think I feel a little bit better about it.
All right. So our student parent orientation plans, we did have the first one we had the first one tonight. Or from between 3 and 4, that went really well. We are gonna have another one on Wednesday, basically question and answer, just like Mr. Quinn had. We have, so our students for orientation, our staff will go over the protocols and procedures with them, including staging areas and lunch procedures. For the hybrid learning, staff will also assign the materials and Chromebooks. They'll go over and get acclimated to the hybrid schedules, which is slightly different than the Power School, and staff will set students up with Google Classroom, online text, and go over how remote learning will look with students for the next few weeks. There's been a lot of things that have been going on as far as, like I said, our staff and our faculty really helping each other out and having each other's back and trying to make it work the best we can with what we got. And it's taken an awful lot to get where we are right now. And I think I can echo the sentiments of Mr. Quinn, Mr. Przarski, that we're as ready as we can be. And we're good. It's going to happen on Wednesday and Thursday. And our main priority, our main goal is to make sure that these kids know that our kids, we're happy to see them. We want to see them back, and we make it as best experience as we can. And I think that's the kind of the mantra we got at OMS right now.
And just to jump in, because I don't think I put this in the original thing, is that our remote students will be getting materials and Chromebooks ahead of time. That is happening tomorrow in our building.
Questions from the board? I heard you say lunch, classrooms, or are you guys in the cafeteria?
We're in the classrooms.
We're in the classrooms, yeah. We're 6 feet apart in the classes there.
All right, and remote learning, again, you guys are gonna continue to hear me say this, because I just think it's so important. Are we, again, ready to roll out a much more robust version of it with expectations, clear expectations for kids? Like, when is that message getting sent to them? Is that gonna be part of the first day that they're in? I know I continue to hear a lot about hybrid, and I totally understand we have to get prepared for that for the 5th, but again, on the 21st, it's full remote. And I haven't heard a lot about that tonight.
That's part of the reason for the orientation. That's exactly what the teachers are doing with their kids. They're giving them their schedule, they're getting them on Google, they're getting them on their computers, making sure they have access and know what time they're supposed to be there Monday morning. That's what we built the orientation around.
Right, and to back that up, so that's the orientation piece, but to back that up, our professional development has been solely planned around that. The UDL, the Terra trainer, Katie Novak coming in, and us giving them the time as building principals to do that, play with that, go in there and try to do that sort of work. So they're planning and they're executing for orientation day.
Good, thank you. September?
I just have one quick question for you. What you had mentioned, the parents, I'm sorry, it was actually the elementary principals who talked about the parent frustration with not knowing. And they have this lovely little calendar. So when my student goes to the middle school for their orientation day, when they walk out the door, in writing, they're gonna have all of this information so that the parent who wasn't at the orientation at school will be able to.
Yes. They're gonna have the schedule and information from the teachers, and the teachers are gonna include the parents on the Google Classroom emails so that they know what's going on.
Beautiful, thank you.
The guardian notification will be turned on and the kids will leave in hand with their schedule for where they're gonna go first period when they come back and how they're gonna sign on for the hybrid model, or the remote model.
Thank you.
Yes, Paul.
So my question is just about when their students are back in the building and they are transitioning from class to class. It sounds like you guys have a nice process down. Who sanitizes the room in between those transitions, between one group and the next group? How are the desks washed down? Who takes care of that?
So at this point, we're encouraging, so it's gonna be a cross between both the teachers and the students. We're, you know, assigning jobs, that sort of thing. Really think at our level, the kids want to help, they wanna be part of the, you know, keeping their space clean. So, you know, assigning one student kind of the sprayer, and the other students are gonna be grabbing the paper towels, washing them through, doing that sort of thing. And they're gonna go back, stand by their desks, right? So they're not gonna go sit back down in their desk, but they're gonna stand by their desks, and we have a kind of the best laid plans for transition is they're gonna coordinate with their teacher team and dismiss from their seat, because their seats are already 6 feet apart. So if you can imagine, there's kind of like 3 in a row, 12, right? And you can dismiss one row at a time. They're already 6 feet apart. They're gonna travel down the hallway 6 feet apart. We got the arrows marked out for the traffic flow, and everybody will empty out that way, and then they'll come in. Some will come in the back door, so to speak, and others will come in from the main door. So that's kind of how the sanitation process works, as well as the dismissal from the classrooms.
So I think the sanitation process, like kids can clean up after themselves at their own desk. There needs to be a way for each child to wash their hands and clean disinfectant off their hands after they clean.
The hand
and sterilize.
sanitizer, yeah.
Not a hand sanitizer, a water, soap, not a hand sanitizer, because they've got to get the chemicals off their hands from the desk that they have cleaned. So that's the only concern I have, is if students are cleaning their own desks, and that's not going to be a teacher-led thing, children have to have access to soap and water to clean their hands and get the chemicals off. And then another thing that I shared with their superintendent is there should be an opt-in or out. You know, parents should have the right to say, I feel comfortable with my child cleaning said desk, or I do not. I feel comfortable with my child having hand sanitizer, or I only want my child to have soap and water. So that's something I'm still looking for the district to provide to parents. That's all.
Any other comments? All right, thank you, Mike and Amy.
Thank you for everything.
High school, gentlemen.
Hi, Amy. So at the high school level, we have 28 eighth graders choosing remote, 27 in ninth grade, 26 in 10th grade, 25 in 11th grade, and 17 in 12th grade. So overall, about 24% of the high school has chosen to start remotely. With that, we are able to offer an English class in 8th grade, 2 math classes, because we run 2 different maths for 8th grade, 2 science classes and a civics class, taught remotely by high school teachers. In 9th grade, in English, in Algebra 1, a world history, and an introductory physics. In 10th grade, in English, a geometry, a biology, and a U.S. History 1. In 11th grade, we will be offering English, Algebra 2, Chemistry, and U.S. History 2. And in 12th grade, we're offering English and Advanced Math Decision Making, which is the senior class. We're working with teachers, if they're a Singleton AP students, for them to be able to remote in with the classes, with the cohorts. We're also at this point going to be able to offer a Spanish 1 remotely, with a goal of supporting, we have a few Spanish 2 students, maybe support them trying through Edgenuity. Average class size, so the most we can have in a class safely with the 6 feet is 12. So each cohort would not be larger than 12. Overall, the average class size is 9. Room alterations, again, so we have 12 desks in each room. We took out any type of non-essential furniture. We have touchless hand sanitizers in each room. We are going to establish a QR system for our passes, where there won't be any paper passes or pens. Students will be able to use their Chromebook or their phones to use a QR grid, and that will be sent automatically to the health and safety monitor that will be at the bathroom. So we can certainly use that for contact tracing, God forbid. No lockers. We've blocked off all the lockers. Students will be using their backpacks. We've asked the teachers, nothing on their windowsills and definitely nothing on their heaters. Our stairways in hallways will be one way. You can see the signs on the floor and on the walls. We have the multiple social distancing signs. We have a fob system now for staff. We've designed so buses are going to come in the front as they usually do. We have hand sanitizers right when the kids come in. When the kids come in, buses, it's going to be a little earlier, but once we have the breakfast up and going, the students will be able to grab their lunch and go right to their first period class. Seniors and juniors, we're asking to park over at by the auditorium side, and they're going to be entering in that door for the auditorium. Hand sanitizers as well. We're hoping to work something out with food services where grab and go breakfast can be right there and they can go right to their classes. Drop off is going to be like last year, but they're going to be diverted into the parking lot by the basketball gym, and they'll go in through that door again. Hand sanitizers right there, and hopefully we'll be able to have breakfast that they can grab and go right to their classroom. We're through Mr. Truax's hard work, we're able to get 3 water bottle fountains. So we will have those available for the students, which are touchless. We're going to shut off any of the spout where kids would have to go down and drink. And then for kids who do not have water bottles, we're going to have disposable cups that they can use. The professional development, I think Mike hit it, out of the park. I think we had Katie Novak, who's kind of like a high school version of the Tara trainer. So she was really, really good. And what I liked about her is that, so she was with us at the high school on Tuesday, and she asked, teachers for feedback on what they really want. And she used that, and that's exactly what they got when she came back on Friday. So they wanted, show us how to plan a lesson from remote lesson from start to finish. And so they were really impressed with that. And we provided them, the goal was to provide them with the knowledge and the tools to be able to teach effectively in a hybrid and a remote setting, also, without losing their minds. And I think we did that, but I think we also gave them enough time to kind of put what they learned into their own lesson planning. So I thought it was really, really well thought out. You have, the calendar of the things that they went through. And I think a lot of that came from the surveys from the faculty. What would have made it better, back in March and April. And I don't want to think of those months anymore, but other health and safety changes, obviously our schedule has changed. We are at a block schedule this year. The governor and the commissioner came out and really wanted to limit student movement, but I really don't think there's a high school in the state that could do that. So Dr. Nash had reached out to the Board of Health and presented the block scheduling, and they were okay with that because it did limit passing time. Our entry into the building is by appointment only. And the main 8th grade science teacher with the hybrid students, she's going to be teaching here. You can kind of see her desks. So we're going to keep the majority of the 8th graders in this hallway. Obviously, we do have some, going out to, because we have one high school teacher at each subject, and then we have electives, but as best we can, we're keeping the 8th graders in one area. New hires. Mrs. Brittany Burlingame is our new 8th grade math teacher. Miss Lindsay Ryan is, again, we have another new guidance counselor, but she's really, really great. Miss Kristen Harvey has joined us as the main office secretary. And Mrs. Jennifer Halloran has been hired as our long-term sub for Spanish, though we do, miss the person who she is replacing. Jennifer one of her part-time job is actually she teaches Spanish remotely, so we kind of lucked out with that. We are finalizing our full-time custodian. We did put a candidate through to the superintendent, and we're still working on filling the part-time position. I believe there are 2 new applicants that we will review. Student and parent orientation, as Mr. Canacchioli has said, the students are going to listen to each other more than they're going to listen to me and Mr. Truax. So thank you to Student Council who put out, 2 great videos. I thought today's was fantastic, kind of really exemplified the superintendent's letter today. So one of the videos was an orientation for the 8th graders that went out this past Friday, and then the new health and safety changes went out today. Mrs. Granette, our new, not new to the district, but new to the high school, will be hosting 2 Google Meets tomorrow. First session with cohort A, and then the second session with cohort B, and then the remote students. Kind of give an overall, the same presentation she gave to the teachers, and then be available to answer any questions. She's also going to be able to provide that for parents next week. Thank you to the tech department and Mr. Truax. We were able to get out the bulk of the 8th grade Chromebooks today, and we'll finish that. So the 8th graders hopefully will have their Chromebooks before they come in. I think that's it.
Questions from the board? Yes, September.
So a couple of things. First of all, clarifying question. When you talked about the QR system, you said Chromebooks are phones. So we currently have a no phone policy. So I'm just curious if we are putting that by the wayside in order to use this QR program, because I hate to see them walking around with their Chromebooks, but I also hate to see the phones out and they
Yeah,
get.
well, I think in this day and age, we have to try, something, and I'm thinking this is the time, so I don't know what we're gonna put away, because when they're in the classroom, it's gonna be away. But if it's a safer way for them to sign out and us to know exactly where they're going and when they've been there, we're gonna give it a shot. And I think with the cohorts having half the population in, at a time, I think it's a good time to try it.
Okay.
So in the classroom, definitely not. The phones are away, but I think it's a good
Just
opportunity
getting in
to.
and out. Okay, thank you. My next question is, just because you guys are here when I thought of it, what is the protocol for the students, and I'll just focus on high school kids who haven't seen each other, some of them for 6 months, and they may run over and hug each other, they may high five. I don't care about COVID, blah, blah, you know how they are. So what are we I know we have these health and safety monitors, but what exactly are we planning to do if and when, I should say when, those situations occur every day?
So I tried unsuccessfully to ask Justin to add cattle prodders to the PPE.
It's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
Mhm.
And obviously it's through education, it's through repetition. It's what I'm really focusing on, and I really don't think we're gonna see it, but the student who blatantly won't wear it. Just like in-school suspension, we'll have remote opportunities for them during the day. We'll have parent conversations, and I meet as best as I can weekly with Swickle principals and even my daughter's school, and it was made very clear that if there's not a medical reason for someone to not wear a mask and they don't, then they would be automatically put into the remote learning situation.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm hoping that, you can't go into Walmart, you can't go into N&J's, you can't go anywhere.
Right.
So I'm hoping that they're used to it now and they understand and they respect, and they're seeing all these colleges where the kids aren't and what's happening, and so I'm hoping. And I think our athletes have the most to lose, so I'm hoping they're gonna spearhead that, what's not that I'm looking out there today, but I did notice some of the field hockey players, working out and stuff like that, but they're all wearing masks.
Good.
So I think we need to kind of, just like with the student council, with the videos, I think we need to, our student leaders need to lead the charge, but.
All right, thank you. And my last question is a loaded one,
Oh, boy.
about student schedules.
Yep. So I'm gonna take the bumps and bruises for it being late. They will have them before they come in, but just at the last school committee voted on the new remote learning. Parents had until that Friday, and we've had people choose remote or come back, and so what I will say is the schedules will be out before the kids come in. But with the cohorts, I want it right. I'd rather take the bumps and bruises of where is it, instead of why do I have 15 kids in my class? At the end of the year, teachers all had the subjects that they were going to teach before they left. during the year, we sent out a Google form to all students who requested AP to make sure they still wanted it. So before the teachers left, the AP teachers, they had a list of their kids. So the kids knew exactly, those students, or the teachers knew exactly what students were gonna be with them, and all those students have those classes. So I think the vital information came out. I think people are chomping at the bit for the other information, but it needs to be right before it goes out.
Okay, and then one last thing that you just brought to my forefront of my mind. We received an email about the QCC ability to take a class.
Yep.
Is there any more information coming on that? Because we had like literally maybe 24 hours to turn that around. So I would assume, like me, many people said, yes, we're interested, but that would be pending. I don't know anything about it, except what I know from here.
Well, I mean, so I have had parents say, yes, can you provide me with more information, and I did, so
Okay,
if anyone wants to reach out to me with specific questions, I will get back to them.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else, questions, comments? Again, great to hear consistency and follow through, because that's what it's gonna take at any level. So masks and protocols, you know you're gonna have a population that challenges it, and glad to hear that that's the mindset coming from the group right now. But again, I'm gonna backtrack to remote learning, expectations, attendance, how we tracking this? Is it first period of the day, they're marked present or absent, and then a teacher's gonna follow that the rest of the day? Report kids who are just not, because let's face it, right? It's not like here, you don't show up for a class, you get written up, you get sent down. You don't show up for a virtual class, you know, who's tracking me, who's finding me? Are we good with that? Do we have a plan in place? I mean, that is my concern, is, you know, you guys have heard me probably say ad nauseum. We have one chance to do this right. We have a chance to start out on the 21st doing this really well. Do you guys feel, and even at the middle school level, that you have a good plan to track kids who aren't gonna show up to classes? Because it's gonna happen. And what's the plan?
Yeah, so, you know, so with the hybrid, obviously, I know we don't remote, but let me start with hybrid, because there are gonna be kids at home doing remote during the hybrid. So our teachers are checking in with them, you know, that's really MOA in the morning, in the beginning and in the afternoon. Edgenuity, we have a login system, so we know exactly not only if the kid's logged in, because you can say, okay, kid can log in and then not do anything, but it tracks the number of assignments that the student did while they were logging in. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be, you know, let's get on it. Katie did a great job. Any student identified as not having Wi-Fi, we gave them the opportunity of a hotspot. It's when the kids come in, the remote students are meeting with the teachers on Thursday. And it's the expectations. I mean, I think the big thing is these students now know, one, I think they're hungering for some robust learning, but two, I just lost my train of thought, it's coming back to me. But like, they're gonna get the syllabus, they're gonna say, this is what I expect from you. So it's gonna be right there. We're not, sorry, he hates this, we're not flying the plane as we build it. We're ready, we have a good plan in place, and the kids and parents are gonna know that plan, and they're gonna know the consequences.
All right, that's what I'm looking for, because, I mean, again, we've talked about this in every district, every level, that, you know, the spring was not expected. It got thrown at us. The state gave us some guidelines of optional and review, and then to mandated but review, and then some new, and we just transitioned. And, you know, let's face it, you know, by the end of the day, anyone in the high school level and the middle school level knew how to play the game. This is a joke. That's why I'm saying day one, we have a chance to change this around. So I'm hoping that some of the conversations that are Wednesday and Thursday in these cohorts are really clearly spelling out what remote learning looks like. Because as you said, Dave, remote learning is part of hybrid too. So if we can do remote learning and get that message out that this is a game changer and it's expected, it's not optional. You know, if you're having issues or family issues or internet issues, is there a protocol for them to reach out to an administrator or a teacher to work that out, so the kids aren't just blowing off classes and thinking it's just gonna be a joke. And again, I'm not implying that that's what they're going to do, but it could happen. So as long as we have all those plans in
I've had a lot of students reach out to
place.
me personally to ask about, you know, what it's gonna look like, and I've been telling them it's synchronous. They have no idea what that means, and I'm like, look, if you have a class with me at 10 o'clock, you're on 10 o'clock.
Right.
And I think last year, 2.5 hours a day, kids in school, it's gonna be different, 6.5. I think the kids all know. And I think the teachers all know, and I think we have a plan, and I think we can execute it. Really
Yeah,
do.
no, I mean, it sounds like the plan is there, and, you know, and again, I never worked in a high school, but I know the high school schedule is 10 times more complicated than any other schedule, any other K to 8's gonna try to put together. It just is, and, you know, there's a lot of kids up here, you got kids who are starting to, you know, be independent thinkers, you know, they got all the answers, they're gonna do it their way, et cetera, and that's why we have things in place, right, and then we hold accountable to those things, I think things go smoother. It sounds like you guys are telling me we have a plan.
Yep.
I'm
I'm
gonna trust you that we
predicting-
have a plan.
I'm predicting that our remote is gonna be so robust, some of the kids are gonna say, what is this? No, let me just go back to hybrid. You know, honestly, I think of some of the kids who chose remote, probably were thinking it's gonna be like.
Yeah, but see, we keep talking, I'm talking different language. The remote is the people who've chose full remote, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm talking the kids who are in full remote to start the year and then transitioning to hybrid. That's, that platform needs to be, you know, there needs to be consistency, there needs to be accountability, there needs to be grades, like all of that, I know it's all embedded. I just hope the kids and parents understand that message.
Well, they're gonna see the teachers 2 weeks later, so you know, it's not like it's.
No, they're gonna see the teachers on Monday. They're going through a schedule on Monday, right, the 21st? I have period 1, I gotta be here, period 2, I gotta be
Even
here.
if you're worried about the remote, we're coming back October 5th. You know, it's not like it's May and I'm not gonna see the teacher till September, it's over. There's accountability that way. These teachers, you know.
But you're missing 2 weeks of accountability, Dave. That's what I think me and you are on the same wavelength. We're missing 2 weeks of accountability, and October 5th might not be a reality. Or it might be a reality for a month, and we could be back to full remote. That's why we have an opportunity to do it differently and really have it be a game changer, and I'm just hoping we're ready to do that, starting on the 21st, even backing it up, starting on the 16th and 17th, when you have these orientations. That's where I hope a lot of this message is. With all due respect, the hybrid stuff and the setups and all that stuff is great, but we're passing one step, and I know you guys have, again, that's been the drum I've been beating since the beginning here, but we have to be able to do that right, because who knows, we could be back in that long-term again. And we had a chance, and shame on us, I'm not just you, my district, other districts, shame on us if we are not ready for it. So, again, I'm not implying you're not, I'm just asking, and it sounds like you guys have a plan, and I'm good.
Comfortable, yeah.
September?
Just one quick question, and this is for all the schools. I was thinking about the absence. So kids do get sick. They're gonna be out of school or not able to, if it's their remote week, they're at home. Obviously, if they're expected in school that week, you would call the school. Is the protocol still the same if your student will not be attending school virtually for the day? Are we supposed to call the school? Are we supposed to just let them not show up for attendance? If you could just explain.
I would certainly call the school.
Okay, so same way you're recording your absence.
So we're taking attendance anyway, so I'm assuming we'd have a
There would
system
be
in
a
place where
list.
we'd call.
Okay, or there would be, if you had 10 calls that day, that, I guess, I would assume the teachers are notified if kids are absent, or is it when their list comes down to you?
So it's all live, so when the first period, the teachers will take attendance, because
Yeah.
we're, like they normally do, and then
Yeah.
we'll do the lunch order, like we
Yeah.
normally do, and then that goes down. And
Okay.
so that generates a list,
Perfect.
and the attendance secretary will call
Call us.
home anyone
Yeah.
who
Okay.
doesn't come in tardy, and,
Okay,
yeah.
great, I just wanted to be sure that,
Yeah.
what we're supposed to do, thank you.
I do apologize, I wasn't involved with the actual hiring process, but I do want to say we also have Rita Haley here with the ACE program, our adjustment counselor, great addition, so I didn't want to not forget her.
Master Chief?
Hmm?
Master Chief K, right?
Well, see, we have two Master Chiefs, so if you could just
Oh,
mention
I hired him
one.
a long time ago, too.
Yes, that was a long and arduous
June.
process, but I apologize. Master Chief K is our second NJROTC instructor. So we're full program down there.
Anything else for the OHS admin? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You too.
Staff plan for COVID, is that you?
It's just informational, I just wanted you to have a copy of what has
Okay.
gone out to all of our staff. This was
Appreciate that.
put together by our new payroll and personnel
All right.
supervisor, Ellen Racine Weatherwax. This, as I said, is really for informational purposes for you. It gets into some of the nitty-gritty, so that everybody's on the same page, even though they probably have heard a lot of discussion on some of these areas. There are some that are not. It includes, for example, the flow chart for FFCRA leave, and then it goes on to things like limited sharing of food and utensils and things that you sometimes don't even think about, to how to remove your gloves if you're wearing nitrile gloves, and then links to a lot of different websites. So I just wanted to give that to you.
Looks like the next thing, Dr. Nash, staff childcare.
Staff childcare. By way of introduction, as many of you are probably aware, DESE had issued some guidance, particularly around some concerns that probably were generated at the state level from different associations with respect to trying to work to accommodate, in particular, teachers and childcare, based on the fact that so many school districts had different models, and the fact that there wasn't a consistent model across the state. It was really driven by districts. So DESE had put out some guidelines. As I said, those guidelines suggested that when feasible and possible, working with your association, could you provide some type of childcare, albeit for some period of time, a limited period of time, or a longer period of time. I know that there are districts who have developed associations with WISE and outside organizations, if they did not have opportunities, also working out some discussions with districts about other districts taking certain students. But we did receive a request from the OEA a while back to examine the potential of providing some childcare services for school-age children of our teachers. I spoke also with the steward of our next largest group, our instructional assistants, to see if potentially there would be an interest there. As of this date, we had 22 school-age children representing about 12 staff members who have expressed an interest. At that point in time, I began to look for space. As you've heard the principals talk about, we really don't have a lot of space, nor did we really want to introduce another cohort group into our buildings of students. It didn't make sense from a health or safety issue. So I called the town manager to ask if there were any potential areas or spaces that we could look at, which might be available. She did get back to me in a very fast fashion to offer some space within our center, our community center, right down on the first floor. Mr. Packett and I, our educator director, investigated those spaces. There are 2 spaces, as I listed for you. We took a tour with Mrs. Lambert, who's the interim director. One space is a rather good-sized room, 21 by 27. It was formerly the room as you enter the building on the left-hand side that was used for crafts. It's a space that is open at this point in time. However, as she, I think, indicated to Nick, that in the future, if their program is able to reopen, that space would not be available. The smaller room, however, which was used on the right-hand side for babysitting, it's very colorfully decorated, I think would be available on a longer time basis. So when we knew that we had space, I then approached our educator director to see what it would take for staffing and what that would look like. Nick, do you want to speak a little bit about that? As to what, and I don't have the latest update from you with respect to when we reached back out to our staff, did we really have this strong interest once we made some determination that this was the space, and that obviously we would look to charge, some kind of a nominal charge so that we could cover our staff. So you want to speak about where we are?
So I'm still waiting to hear back from teachers and our instructional aides as to who is definitely going to be using it. I think we had a lot of interest when it was just thrown out there that there would be childcare. However, now that there is a cost, there are some people who are backing out a little bit, but we're figuring it out. We would only need about 2 staff members in each of the 2 rooms that we have available. If for some reason enough people drop out, we would just reduce to 1 room, and then we would only need a handful of staff to manage it from there. I think it'll be a good program. I just worked with the custodians today to bring over some extra desks from Claire Barton to set them up in the rooms and to get some spacing, to see where we're at as far as how many kids we can fit in each room. And we can fit about 10 to 12 spaced out at 6 feet apart, and that includes with our staff members kind of sitting off to the side. These staff members would be assisting these kids with jumping onto their Zoom meetings and stuff like that throughout the day. They'd be there to help out with any homework and assignments. Granted, they are not teachers, and so I did specify that with the staff members that I did, pointed out to. I just said,
This is strictly supervision. These students
Right.
are really coming with work to do. 2 things I didn't mention. One is that this initially is a short-term program. We had looked at the discussion from September 21st through, at this point, October 5th. The initial 2-week period that we would be in full remote, with the potential of extending it, if, again, we continue to stay in remote, and again, whether there was an interest. We do not know whether we will have, I think you have not heard back from all of the interested staff members, the 12 staff members, to really know whether we would even need 2 rooms and whether we have enough students. But we also know that come later in the fall, it could very well be that we would only have 1 room available in that building should the programs start up with the community center. So it certainly provides us with a solution if it's viable, and again, if we have enough interest from our staff. So. And did we, I think, estimate a little bit about what cost potentially could be? Again,
so
given
we had kind of decided on a cost of $30 a day per child. This would barely cover the cost just to pay our staff. I think either way we look at it, after having to buy some just generic first aid supplies, things like that, just in case. We're not going to be making money off of this, and I'm not looking to make money off of our staff, but at the end of the day, we do need to at least get as close to breaking even as possible with paying staff to work an all-day program.
I think that daily rate was based on our enrollment too.
Right, absolutely.
We know that we're going to need at least 2 staff,
Right.
regardless of how many students we have. So that rate could change if we have fewer students, but we need to have 2 staff members there. Looking at the hours from about, it is grades K through 7. This time, I think most interest is coming at the grades 1 through 3, with some more interest at the middle school level. But primarily, I'd say grades 1 through 3 and 5 and 6 seem to be pretty heavy. We know that based on our parents and where they are from, that it would be as early as 6:45 to probably something like 4 o'clock, the hours if we were running it full day. So that's where we are at this point in time. More information for you. We're not sure whether this program is going to be able to run because we haven't heard back, and we know we have a short turnaround time, and Nick had put out, I think, last week. So do you know what your numbers are at this point?
At this point, I've had, I'm at 8 kids total that have expressed interest to me, and then 3 or 4 of whom have actually registered for the program. So I just put out something again today. I'm hoping, I'll end up reaching out directly to the OEA and the IA stewards to, you know, kind of nudge their staff a little bit, because I mean, I at least need numbers, even if they're not gonna fully commit to it. I just need to start planning. Since I already have 24 desks sitting in a room at the community center, I'd like to know if I can do something with them, so, you know.
Thank you. So what is the minimum number we would be looking at for our break-even point?
The break-even point is about, when I did the math out, I think it was 19 kids.
That we need to participate in order to meet our expenses
Yeah.
for said
Right,
19. So what's our plan if 9 say they want to come?
Then we would just reduce to one room and just have 2 staff members, which at that point, we'd be a little more than breaking even, give or take. But, you know, we'll see what happens. I still
You need
would like
two
to.
staff members per room.
Regardless,
Per room,
right?
yes.
Right, so you said 19 to break even, that would be between the 2 rooms with 4 staff.
Yeah.
So we're looking at 9 to break even with the
With
1 room
about
and 2 staff.
With 2 staff, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yes, I just want to commend you both for looking into this, making this an option for the staff. I think that shows a lot. I know it's not happening everywhere, so whether they take advantage of it or not,
Right.
I appreciate the effort.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you.
All right, anything else from you, Dr. Nash?
I think that is it.
That was it on your agenda?
Yes.
All right, warrant report, Mrs. Griffin?
Yep, so I have a warrant report for this evening, September 14th, 2020. I have signed a school lunch warrant on September 1st, 2020 for $3,323.60. An accounts payable warrant for September 1st, 2020 for $213,350.85. A payroll warrant for September 3rd, 2020 for $572,069.51. An accounts payable warrant for September 8th, 2020 for $49,325.26. And then if there's no questions, tomorrow I'll be signing an accounts payable warrant for September 15th, 2020 for $36,018.96. That is all.
Thank you, Mrs. Griffin. Do we need a motion to approve that, or no? You just tell us? I forget.
I just tell you.
All right.
Mrs. Forbes would know.
Thank you for the information.
You are welcome.
Member comments and requests. We'll start with Mrs. Forbes.
Well, I wanted to publicly thank Lori Kelly for her service to me as well as to the town and everyone else I was unable to attend. They did have a little drive-through retirement party for her that I wasn't able to attend. But she's done great work for us, and I just wanted to thank her publicly. I also want to thank everybody in this room and beyond this room, the teachers and everyone. This has been challenging, all of this unknown, a very difficult situation, and I feel like we're pulling it together in the 11th hour, but we're okay. I am very happy that there will be some fall sports. I think that kids are desperate for, like I said earlier, some normalcy, so I thank Kevin May for that and Mr. Nugent, and also to the committee for approving that. Great job, Pal and Dave, on the 2 policies that you brought forward for us tonight. Thank you, that's a lot of continued hard work. And also a shout out, I did see the Stuco video for the Pirate Voyage, and it was very good and very fun. So thank you, that's it for me.
Thank you. Mrs. Griffin?
Just echo the same sentiments as Mrs. Forbes. I'm, incredibly grateful to all of our administrators and all the staff. It's been just an immense challenge for all of you. I can imagine being in similar shoes. And I just have great gratitude for everybody doing what they're doing for our children and our community. You guys are amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
Yeah, I just want to thank our administration tonight for the updates. I know firsthand what you've been going through since March 13th, really, and especially the last month, the last few weeks with the difficulty filling positions and having people accept things and and back out, and parents changing their minds about what model they want or what cohort they want. So I know what you guys have been through. Very impressed with what you presented tonight. I appreciate that. And I want our teachers to know that we support them. We're excited for them to actually see some kids on Wednesday, and I'm sure they're excited. We're working through it. It's great.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Burke. It's hard to follow, the three of you, because you've said a lot of things. But thank you to all the administrators, teachers, staff, everything you've done to prepare for this. The one thing I talk a lot about is the parent, student, school, and community relationship, and how important it is to keep that kind of continuum going. It's no more important than it is today in this current age. There's going to be lots of bumps in this virtual learning world, this hybrid world. Teachers' computers are going to crash probably at times. Kids aren't going to be able to access. There's going to be all sorts of bumps. It's going to take staying positive. It's going to take staying communicating to each other, and just keep working it together, because it's going to, again, take now more than ever for all of us to work together to get through this, because it's going to be a challenge. I talk to my staff and my school a lot about just staying in the moment, controlling what we can control now, obviously having to have a plan down the road, but the plans down the road now are so changeable that it's just got to try to stay as close to the moment as you can. So good luck to everybody on Wednesday and Thursday. I know you have orientations, and then the full rollout on the 21st, so good luck. And that is all I have. Public comment. So at this time, we will open the floor for public comment. Unless specifically listed, comments are limited to the topics included on this agenda. So anybody for public comment, it would be nice just to see one public comment at some point. Okay, we'll close the floor. Future business topics for future agendas. Our next regular meeting will be Monday, the 28th, 2020. So if any committee members have topics, they can get those to Helen. Is there a timeline on that, Helen? You could probably say it every meeting.
It's the Thursday
Before.
the Monday meeting.
Okay. And we need to go in executive session tonight. So under MGL C30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, as an open session may have detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body. We will adjourn to that session with no intent of returning. We will adjourn from that session. So the public portion of the meeting is over. Thank you all for coming. Have a great night. All right, any discussion? Call for the vote. Mrs. Forbes?
Yes.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, 4 in the affirmative, 1 absent. Meeting is adjourned.